Today on Gravely Amusing, the Halloween franchise special.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another badass mother who didn't take no crap from anybody kind of episode of Gravely Amusing. The only podcast that's never going to give you up, never going to let you down, never going to run around and desert you, never going to make you cry, never going to say goodbye.
That reference would have worked a lot better.
Lie and hurt you. You know what we're going to do? We're going to
got
freaking
Rickrolled.
podcast. What's that?
So we just got Rickrolled.
That reference would have worked
I've
much
been waiting
better
to do that one.
had we recorded yesterday.
What's that?
So that reference would have worked a lot better had we recorded yesterday.
Touche. I'm ready to talk Halloween. This year marks the 45th anniversary of the Halloween franchise. 45 years. So that meant I had to talk about this franchise with my buddies. So joining me tonight are the three kings of geekdom. First is my co-host of the upcoming second podcast from me, titled BP and the Finch, a superhero geek culture podcast that will talk about Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and really anything comic book based or geeky that strikes our fancy. We'll be dropping our first episode on October 20th, which would have been about 11 days before this podcast drops, but we're recording early. But that'll be dropping the same day. Well, it already dropped, but it dropped on October 20th when Spider-Man 2 came out for PS5. It was a pretty darn good one. Finch came up with a pretty sweet idea of Batman villains versus Spider-Man villains. Who has the better villains? It was a battle of the old men of Finch and I defending Batman, and Brandon and Trey, the young guns, defending Spider-Man. It was a pretty chaotic episode, I must say. We had some good fights. For instance, Dre and I dropped Bane on our list, and then Trey and Brandon dropped Kingpin. And it was a tie. We couldn't decide which one was better. I mean, we know which one's better, but we couldn't bring them over. So it was a pretty good episode. So yeah. October 20th,
we know who was better.
On the BP and Finch podcast, check that out. Finch is my BBC, my beautiful black companion of 20 years. The blade to my Deacon Frost. Jure Finch, how you doing, man?
I should have never sent you that video, bro.
You should have never did. I told you. I told you that I will keep that going forever.
No. Thanks for having me on today, Brian. Ready to talk some Michael Myers. Halloween.
Well, contractual obligation. I had to have it. So listen to BP and the Finch for Marvel and some DC stuff, and then get a nice second helping of DC stuff in this DC Comics buffet. And listen to our good friends, the Krypton Report, for all things Kryptonian. Speaking of that Krypton Report, I figured we're going to have them on the show. So tonight we got BP and the Finch and the Krypton Report on Gravely Amusing. A hell of a show tonight. So next up on our horror panel is the host of Sweating to the Oldies 90s edition, and also the voice of the Krypton Report. He's a amazing DC Comics podcast that embraces fatherhood, family. You can often hear their children in the background. It's just a good family podcast. He hosts also a second podcast, a little movie podcast on their Patreon called Requel, that talks movies and basically what he would do to make it better.
Yep.
It talks about horror movies and basically any idea that Tyler has in his crazy brain that he has. So, the man with three names, Jonathan Tyler Patrick.
Hey, I'm glad to be here because this is one of those franchises that Brian and I have kind of bonded with over it.
Absolutely.
Considering that, we had the one come out in 2018, and I think it was one of the big times. It was like Brian and I went to the movies. Like we have to see something together. So yeah, this gonna be fun.
It was that movie that you were like, okay, I'm getting away from the kids. This is the way it is. It's Halloween time. We were so excited for Halloween 2018.
We were.
So we were so pumped. And lastly, I apologize here because the Surgeon General and the World Health Organization has informed me earlier today that I must read this disclaimer before this man speaks. So I have it here. On behalf of the Surgeon General of the United States of America and the World Health Organization, I advise you to proceed with extreme caution. James Cole III's presence, masculinity, and manhood are so powerful that if you are a woman between the ages of 21 and 101, there is a chance that you could end up pregnant just listening to this podcast. It is recommended that if you are ovulating, you slowly stop this podcast, throw your phone or listening device on the ground, pour gasoline on it, and set it ablaze. If you are listening in a car, please get out immediately, place a brick on the gas pedal, and have it ride over a cliff. If you are a man, you have just become pregnant too. He's that powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, James literally mother effing Cole.
Oh, you've been working on that one for a while.
Months, buddy. Months. So, for part one of this epic podcast, we're going to cover two different timelines tonight. So, if you are a first time fan of Halloween or just interested in what it's all about, Halloween is a bit of a mess of a franchise. There are so many freaking timelines of what they decide to change, of what would be canon, and mix it around. Tonight, we're going to cover two of those. So, I think Halloween, and correct me if I'm wrong, because and Tyler, because do you know everything? Is Halloween the one franchise that has the most reboots and requels, and anything that starts with a re in it?
I mean, that feels right. I mean, because Star Wars has technically never been rebooted.
No.
Spider-Man has been rebooted.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I would say it is. Just real quick.
It has to be Halloween because
Halloween's
has more reboots than Wonder Woman 1984 had release dates.
What about Batman? What about Batman?
Or Flash?
Well, I'm thinking Batman because Batman might be the only one that comes closest.
And Batman's twice as old.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just wondering about that.
Because hold on, Batman's 1, 2, then a soft reboot, 3.
I think Finch is right. I think Batman has it beat.
Yeah, Batman has it beat.
Yeah.
Well, that's just because they have to put Batman in everything, and they got to keep recasting him.
But the difference with Halloween is it has the reboots, like the soft reboots within itself, and then like going back and rebooting, like soft rebooting to the original. It's only had one clean reboot, but
Rob Zombie.
Yeah,
that's
Zombie. Cool. Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about the original timeline. So that would be films 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to cover the reboot timeline of Rob Zombie. Mainly because at least the first film that Rob Zombie did, he tells kind of the same story. Then in part 2, tomorrow, when we record, we'll discuss the H2O timeline. We'll drop in Season of the Witch and the H40 timeline and what we hope for the future. So it's going to be probably as nuts as our Friday the 13th special, if not more so, because they made some odd decisions in this franchise. So let's begin, gentlemen. Let's travel back in time to 1963, where evil took shape.
Back in time.
So, if you don't know anything about Halloween, I'll give a little brief explanation just on the first movie, and then we'll go into the other movies, but not much detail. So, Halloween, basically, the story of Halloween in a nutshell is in 1963, a young boy named Michael Myers kills his sister on Halloween night and goes into the nut house. He doesn't speak for 15 years. And then in 1978, he comes back and he goes back home. He escapes the mental hospital and he starts killing babysitters one by one. And he has a special obsession with one particular babysitter named Laurie Strode. And he kills all her friends in Halloween night. And then Laurie stops him with the help of his psychologist, Dr. Loomis. And that's essentially what Halloween's about. So, going down the list, we'll start with James. James, what do you like about the original movie and what do you hate about it?
Oh, well, hate. I mean, not much. The original Halloween is pretty much a master class in writing and direction and musical score. I mean, I bet more people know the Halloween theme than know the John Williams Superman theme, or at least it's very
Ooh.
comparable. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
I will say I'm not musically inclined, but I can actually play the Halloween theme on the piano. At least just those notes.
Get
It's
a
like
piano right now.
one thing I can
Right
play.
now. Get it. I will wait. Do you have a piano in your house?
I do not.
Okay. That stuff behind you, yeah, like keep all the Batman stuff. Sell whatever else you got. Get a little mini piano.
Just
Give an
start.
accordion.
Like I said, all I could play is just those notes. But yeah, that's
I'm about to say, do you have a
Well, I want to hear
tablet?
it.
You could probably just download a piano on a tablet and be. Ding, 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 ding,
I have one
ding.
on my phone, but we're using phones. So
I used to be able to
sorry.
play it on guitar. I used to be able to play pick out the main part on guitar. It's just been a while.
Nice.
I got it. I got to hear
Yeah,
this.
the first one's great. It really builds up some suspense. You got this opening. You have this opening from the point of view of the killer, walking around in the house, and kill somebody, and then come to find out it's this little child, who just murdered everybody in the house. So it's pretty. And then you got, I mean, Donald Pleasance. I mean, he's a staple throughout the whole series. Especially the ones that we're gonna talk about tonight. And the character of Loomis is just, I mean, when they rebooted it, they had to bring that character back.
No, absolutely.
Michael Myers, the shape, just iconic, brutal, high body count, and the first person to play Michael Myers, arguably the best. I mean, outside of the viciousness of Tyler Mane, man, like
Nick Castle,
yeah,
the best. So you have no complaints about this movie?
Oh no, the first one, I love the first one.
Okay, all right, Tyler.
The first thing is Carpenter was smart changing the name from the Babysitter Murders to Halloween, because by naming it just that, even though it doesn't have anything to do with the holiday other than just the time it takes place, it immediately keeps your movie in a consciousness every year. So every year your movie's going to be pulled back out or discussed, and it builds up a following and a repeat viewing.
It's like
The
the
first
title
one,
Friday the 13th. Every time Friday the 13th comes out, everybody's about Jason.
Absolutely.
So-
The title is so important. So I'm glad you said that, Tyler. You're right.
the thing about the first one is it's so good. It's a slasher movie, but it's not a gore fest. It reminds me a little bit more like in a line with Psycho, where it's about suspense. And James, calm down. Um, uh, but it's so hard to think of and talk about the first movie in a vacuum. Like that's the hardest part for me is like just looking at the first movie and not thinking about anything else.
Hmm.
But because there is so much that's built on, and as we'll talk about through these podcasts, the first movie is your to get all hip canon event. It's your fulcrum point.
Yes, there. That's the word I wanted you to say. Your
Uh,
fulcrum. It's your sacred timeline.
That one's the one that has to exist for anything else to happen.
Yes.
But as far as what you were saying about I don't really think there's anything I don't like other than maybe a couple shots like here and there. Like with the sound, I think a couple of them are just kind of eh. But that's kind of 70s filmmaking too.
Yeah.
So I kind of take that into account because, like we've discussed before, Brian, watching some of these horror movies, like the Dracula movies and stuff set in the 70s, there's just something about them that I'm just like, it doesn't work for me. But I don't have any complaints for the first Halloween film. Like, I really don't.
Yeah, it's about, older filmmaking, making movies at the time, making television at that time. Movie theaters and TVs, the picture was not as clear as it is today. The sound wasn't as clear as it is today. I mean, Star Trek is probably the biggest example of William Shatner like playing for the back row, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Getting that performance through a fuzzy television, through bad sound, so that way you felt it. You know what I mean?
Can I ask this real quick? Have you guys watched the movies that made us the Halloween edition on Netflix?
It's the only episode I did watch.
The
So
the
far.
movies that made us was a great. Jania and I sat and watched the one they did the horror run and watched all of them. But you got to watch them in order because it really shows how they roll into each other. But yeah, there was some really great, like the opening scene with Michael, some great camera work when you look at what they were using at the time. So I just got to point that out as the film person in me. Basically using handheld cameras before there really was the high quality handheld cameras.
Right. Like as a filmmaking dude, Tyler,
Yep.
like I knew you would have some directorial comment on this movie. Like I think some shots are just really great.
I mean, some of the best things he does in this film is not doing anything.
Is what?
Not doing anything. Just kind of letting Michael stand there, or like we don't really understand what he's doing, and just kind of being present before things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments you have there, Tyler?
No, I'm good. I'll comment as we go. I want to let Jerry talk.
Okay.
Go, Finch, man.
Good, Finch.
Pretty much on par with you guys. There's not really much wrong with this movie. It's a classic. It's a masterpiece. Carpenter was on his A game right there, man. He got the producing. Well, did he? He wrote it, directed it, scored it. Just it's great. I mean, there's so many interesting facts about the movie, like how it was shot for such a low budget, and the fact that Freddy Krueger worked on the movie. Did you know that? Robert Englund threw leaves around on set because they filmed it in California instead of in Illinois or New Jersey. So yeah, there's a lot of like interesting facts. The whole
Camp Crystal Lake's Jersey. Haddonfield is Illinois.
Haddonfield is Illinois.
oh yeah,
Elm Street is Ohio.
yeah,
Springwood, Ohio.
yeah. Obviously everything with the mask, how it came into fruition. That's always interesting about Shatner. To James's point about Captain Kirk preaching to the back row. It's just so many interesting facts, such great filmmaking that basically branched off and um, inspired so many other franchises like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and other things like that. So, and then like we already discussed, that score, man. Whew. And then oh man, I don't know.
Play it on the piano.
No, I haven't watched a lot of horror because growing up, I wasn't really allowed to, But Michael Myers and Halloween was one of the ones that I always watched every year. And surprisingly, like my parents didn't get mad about me watching it. Maybe it's like James said, there's not a lot of blood and things like that in the first one. So
it's a great entry port for this style of horror.
Yeah,
and
it's a very accessible slasher film. There's a lot of suspense built. The blood is pretty minimal, as well as the language, and it has some nudity, but most of the things, most of those things
that's
can
exactly what
be.
James goes for.
Most of those things can be. That's why I love Friday the 13th Part 5.
Yeah, so does Finch.
No, so it makes it very easy to be placed on television. So it's played on Halloween.
That's actually the
every year.
first time I ever watched it was on TV. So
it was on USA like all the time in Halloween's time. And then AMC did this Fear Fest.
AMC took over it. And
yeah.
Now I can't even find it. I was trying to watch it before this, and I don't pay for AMC Plus, and I don't have cable. So I'm like, dude, I could watch Halloween 2 on Hulu or on Prime. I could watch all the new ones on Peacock, but I can't find the original Halloween.
The original, well, part of it is because the rights. I can't remember the whole dispute, but there's something really crazy about the rights to the original.
They were like Galaxy distribution?
So it gets bogged down a lot when it comes to the rules and outlines for the streaming and everything.
All right. So I have a crap load of notes. So I'm going to get into them, and I want us to discuss them a little bit. Because like when Halloween Ends came out, Tyler and I, we wrote like a thesis. Like maybe me a little bit too more obsessive because like I wrote notes as I was watching it. I paused it. I took screenshots of the movie, like everything, and I put it on my like Apple Notes and stuff. So so the first note I have here: does he kill Judith because she brought a stranger into his home? Or does he kill Judith just because? Like, I started thinking, like, before Halloween Ends came out, like, I started thinking, like, does he kill people because they come near his house? Is it all about his house?
Let me ask you this, Bri.
What's that, Tyler?
Let me ask you this.
I can't hear you very well, buddy.
I said, let me ask you this. I'm not talking on my, I'm coughing. I'm trying not to cough.
It's okay. You're dying on me. It's all right.
I like the question, but my issue with your question, not that it's an issue, is this
I
goes
know,
back.
You have an issue with everything I do.
This goes back to the problem of looking at the first movie in a isolated box. If we're just looking at the first movie, I don't know, because I think the first movie is geared to be a mystery. If we're looking at it, but when you're looking at it, how it connects to another timeline, that's when we start with all this deduction, because with what you're saying, I think is a perfect idea that goes along with
Dad.
The age 40 line.
Well, we've got
Thanks to Brian's Apple library,
And-
I'm watching the first movie right now in the background.
You're
so
welcome.
Sam in the first movie in a box,
I'll give you that.
Dr.
Oh, wait,
Loomis
you don't have apples,
he's evil. He's just that's what he is. He just kind of becomes this killing machine. He does it once when he's younger and he's locked away, only to finally escape and do it again. That's kind of the thing that's kind of what made him more scary than we all agree that, over explaining things can take some of the mystery and some of the horror out of it. But the fact that he just is, he's just a killer, just a murderer.
I'm glad you
nothing
Well,
behind the eyes,
I do think that could work for maybe the first movie,
Sure.
but then it's like all the other movies, he's just killing. And then it becomes, when you get into other timelines and stuff,
Yeah.
I don't think it works so well as like he's just protected his house.
It was just something I was pondering, like did he and also I have a note too. What happened to Judith's boyfriend? We never touched that character ever again.
He became
hits it, he quits it, he leaves, he gets out of there.
No, I wrote that short story. He became a priest because he learned that sin is bad and that fornication is wrong and that you have to pay the price. So he ran away and joined a church and became a priest, and he preaches abstinence now. He travels to high schools and he preaches it.
Oh, that was that asshole who came to my high school.
Jason's a weapon of the church too.
He's like, listen, guys, the night that I hit it, it was glorious, and then she was killed by her brother.
I was watching CinemaSins. Anybody watch CinemaSins?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
They were doing the first Halloween movie, and he's like, he was in there for about a span of like a minute and 32 seconds, and then they're getting dressed. He's like, even in high school, come on, man.
He must have
at least a little stamina.
He probably had a lot of pregame going, or he was the first Jim from American Pie.
Right.
Geez, he lasted a minute 20.
Yeah,
he beat me.
132.
I do think in the first film, it's all about the mystery of why. And that's the scariest part is there's not really a rhyme or reason. I mean, the first scene is constructed so well. And like I said, I turn it on the background because it feels like a prowler outside. And you're like, oh, someone's outside, and in one breath, his sister was supposed to be his babysitter. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the original concept of like the babysitter murders and stuff, she's supposed to be watching him. We don't know if she's supposed to take him trick-or-treating. Was she, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I wrote that in notes too. Is it a neglection thing? Does he kill because he feels like neglected?
And I mean,
I think all these questions are a little more why we get the deconstruction we get when we reach zombie.
Yeah,
Especially the first
that's what I was going to say. A lot of these are answered in the Rob Zombie remake.
Yeah.
And totally. I think that's why I really enjoy the first one, the Rob Zombie remake.
Me as well.
I like the Rob Zombie remake, the theatrical cut. I don't like some of the choices in the unrated cut.
That's fair. We're going to talk about that tonight.
But but I was saying, like, other than the shot of like his hand, and if you notice when they do it, they kind of fuzz the hand out a little bit. You are really like this reveal in the beginning is almost as classic as realizing that Norman Bates is dressing as his mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you really feel that this is somebody that's broken into this house, that's going after these kids. You have no real sense of who it is. Like
he loves his work. Like he looks over at the knife as he's stabbing. He's admiring everything he does.
Dude, homeboy had his shirt halfway on down the stairs, like and out the front door. Like
so another note I have in here, some more notes here. So in the scene where Loomis is at the graveyard with the caretaker or whatever, because I wrote notes about every scene in this whole dang franchise.
Bryan's publishing a book. Might as well.
I really should. But the caretaker says to Loomis, He says, every town something like this happens. Charlie Bowles in Russellville, same year, 1968, the same year that Michael killed Judith. He finishes dinner, excuses himself from the table, goes to the garage, gets a hacksaw, goes back to his house, kisses his wife and kids, and then proceeds to, and then Loomis cuts him off. That's all we hear of that story. So,
I mean,
1968 Halloween, like, I can see where maybe John and Deborah were planting seeds, like, and that was part of it. Maybe they wanted to tell a story of this Charlie Bowles guy in Russellville, Illinois.
Right.
Like,
Well, with the
the
original
anthology.
concept of the anthology story, having these evil things happen like that, and like Michael Myers happening on Halloween, it really lends itself to that.
yeah, like there's so many different ways to go. Um, I also have a note in here that I think what sells this movie so much, and we've said it so many times, is the score. Like like in this movie, like just the scenes of like I mean I can't sing it. I mean I'm waiting for Dre to play it on piano, but like just like like the hard major chord in certain scenes, and then I can't replicate it. You know what's I mean, but like just Michael peering out, yo, what's up, and then going back, and just the score and the theme song just replicating through the movie builds this tension just nonstop through the movie that it just keeps the fear level up. It keeps the suspense up. It's freaking awesome.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to remember.
the music is fantastic for the suspense. You get the music when you're looking through Michael's POV, when he's walking around through the mask, down the street, around the corner, through the windows,
With the heavy
and
breathing sometimes,
yeah, the breathing inside of the mask. Yeah,
I could never be a killer. I'd be like, oh, oh, slow down.
what's that?
I want to stab you.
What's that?
I mean, you're talking about the music. One of
Yeah.
the biggest things you need to remember is like the music itself is scored in a 5/4 time signature. It's a very uncommon time signature. So that itself makes the music even more eerie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost, I mean, it's almost unnatural. Like, because your most common is 4/4 time. And then you have like 6/8 time. But even then, like you're dealing, if you look at it, like you're dealing with even numbers, so there's like a rhythm to the beat a little bit more. 5/4 time is awkward and odd because it's almost this really odd out of time sync. So the music itself displaces the tension and builds into just this doesn't feel right of what we're seeing.
I'm going to be thinking about for like the next couple of days. I'm going to be greatly thinking about what is more iconic or memorable, the Superman theme or the Halloween theme. I'm going to be thinking about that nonstop.
The Superman theme.
I was to say you're gonna just.
Right.
Yeah, I was to say you're just gonna have to
I
play
think it's
both.
Halloween.
Like,
Well,
you know what
remember
this
the
is?
Superman theme.
All right, you know what this is?
Mixes with the Star Wars theme, so
It sure does. It sure
That's
does.
called John Williams.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
It's just
called
it's just
genius.
flipped.
Well, I mean, I've had this conversation with Brian before. Like,
Yes,
I could
Brian,
be like whistling. I could be whistling the Superman theme, and it'll just gradually turn into the Star Wars, and I'll be like, "No, I was doing Superman." So,
But how much more
it's
often
like-
is that? You're like, and now I'm in Star Wars.
So one other note I have
I
in
mean,
here.
I'm sure Krypton is in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
it is. And I mean,
That's gonna be the twist.
We'll
That's gonna be the
do.
twist at the end of Ahsoka. That's where Balin's skull was headed to Krypton.
We'll talk.
Nice.
We'll talk Star Wars on BP and the Finch. We'll do that. Another note I have in here is Sheriff, Annie's dad, Sheriff Brackett.
Sheriff Brackett.
He says that Michael. He says somebody It doesn't say Michael, but we know it's Michael. Broke into the hardware store, took some knives, rope, and a few Halloween masks. So, like, I kind of almost feel, because I'm an overthinker and I think about everything. I almost feel that also.
The answer is no. This is already no.
I think we could be happy together. Come on, Finch. Don't say no. But I think that also could have been the setup for future Halloween anthologies of like Shamrock masks. When we, I don't know, because it said it was multiple masks, but he only wears one.
He
So
found the one that fit him. He found the one that he identifies with.
the one he
Because
likes.
he's even in at the
The
beginning.
white
He's not
blank stare.
in the beginning. He's not wearing a mask. He's not wearing a mask until he gets ready to kill his sister. Like he picks up the mask off the floor, puts it on, and then and goes in there. So the mask is important. And I'm going to say this real quick as an observation because we know this was filmed in California. The way the Haddonfield looks in this does match more with Halloween Ends. So if you want, I'm all about continuity in sets and back in designs and everything.
Yeah.
That's why one of the reasons I hate Halloween Ends. But if I'm going from this one to that one, it looks more similar because there's too much green.
Yeah, I need to rewatch Halloween Ends. It almost looks like the house that Lori is living in is the same house that Jamie Lloyd was living in.
James, you said you need to rewatch Halloween. No, you don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Well, so I've only seen Halloween Ends once. Okay?
And that's once too many
and
times.
we were watching it. Jamie had never seen them before. So when we started watching it, I had to show her the first one. Obviously it's the fulcrum. It's the jumping off.
The blueprint.
Yeah. So we watched the first one and then we jumped right into H4O. And then we watched Kills because Ends was coming out. So we watched the original and then the H4O timeline. And that's how we watched that. So she didn't have any baggage. She didn't have any of that shit from before.
Which makes it so good.
And that's why it's one of those social experiments of how did she take it? How did she feel about it? Because that was one of the hardest things going into H4 was trying to eject all that history, all that ideas that they've have history together. No, they've only had this one movie and then this.
Yeah. Well, how does that paint your experience, watching one and H4O and then watching 1, 2 and then H2O and Resurrection. And that's how we watched that.
We
went back from H4O to H2O.
Resurrection is like the dark multiverse.
I think that's the good thing about the internet now that we have, though. Like, if we were still young, where they would all of a sudden release this movie and be like, you just have to know going in, like, oh, Halloween 2, 4, 5, 6, H2O, and Resurrection never happened. This is not. Yeah, she's an older character, but this never happened. But we did know that going in, at least, that okay, this is a sequel to the very first one. So I don't know.
That's a very damn good point, Finch.
Yeah. I mean, but it does. Yeah. I would like to, I wish I could go back and watch it from, that point. Yeah. But obviously we knew going in, it's like, okay.
Right. So I have seen them all. I had seen them all. At this point, I still have yet to actually see the unrated producer's cut of Halloween 6. I've only seen
a whole other movie.
Yeah, extra 10 minutes, and it's the only one I've actually seen is the other one, and I mean it's boring.
It's weird.
It's Paul Rudd can't save it. You know what I mean? Like,
he tries. He does.
it's the saving
He
grace.
wasn't the sexiest man alive yet.
Yeah, right. He was damn
That movie-
sexy then, though.
That movie
But,
was so rough on him. He had to eject his middle name. He was like, "I got to change something."
right.
Goodbye, even.
Yeah, it was. 6 watching Curse is like watching uh, uh, Jason Takes Manhattan.
So the kills in the first movie, we only have 5 kills. We have Judith. We have the mechanic that I guess he called on the payphone and said, "Hey man, come here, I need a tow," and he just killed him. We have Annie, we have Bob, and we have Linda. So my question to you is, and then we'll wrap up talking about the first one. Is less more? This is a better horror movie because there's less kills.
I mean, it's the first one.
What's that?
I mean, it's the first movie. Like, you can't go if you're trying to actually be.
But Jason had 10 in the first Friday the 13th.
No, he didn't.
Pam had 10.
Boom.
Well, I would say I don't think so, but I mean, with Jason, it's like a lot of that just killing was, pointless.
Yeah. So
I think you're trying-
part of the thing with the Friday the 13th franchise is we knew going in we were going to get a higher body count. So some of the characters that we saw were fodder. You didn't get much from them, with like the final chapter, you actually get a little bit of character development and teenagers kind of being, or young adults kind of being young adults in a setting, so with a lot of Friday the 13th, you get a little less characters, a little less story in some of those movies with a higher body count. This movie, the first one, I mean, very much like the original Friday the 13th, really great story, a lot of mystery, a lot of suspense built up, and a little less mystery than Friday the 13th, the first one, but a lot of suspense built up. And I think that goes a long way for this movie is that suspense factor before you get those kills really gives you some of that horror. So I don't think it's necessarily less is more, but it is really like the execution, the build up. We know these horror tropes. So when you're watching Halloween, the original one, and you're seeing some of the things happen, like Annie walking through the house, doing the things she's doing, Bobby, her boyfriend, walking through the house. Some of the tropes that you expect because we've seen horror for so many years, like present themselves, but that's not when the kill is going to happen. They build up some of that suspense.
Yeah.
And that is my biggest thing is like where I say, looking at this film, looking at it as a Carpenter film, looking at it, like I said, I lean towards more like this film. You can kind of compare it in a way to Psycho. A very, it's a film that relies a lot on thriller and suspense before you get to like a lot of your kills. It is yet to fall into the sequel conundrum. If you want to go more contemporary, let's look at the first Saw film. The first Saw film is radically different than where the franchise goes. But yet people lump it all together. The first one used more psychological horror. It used a less is more. It let your mind put the pieces together. And, it was more straight a James Wan film. Then after that, it's taken over and changed. And the directors that come in really shape the franchise. One thing worth pointing out is in Bryan's library for this film, it's listed as John Carpenter's Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So it is put that it is geared towards the director, his vision. And so the less is more, I think goes, what are you making? In here, they're making a film that is, yes, has horror in it, but there's a lot of suspense. There's a lot of thriller. There's a lot of mystery. And to do that kind of character work and to build that tension, you can't have too many kills. Like, you maybe could have got a couple more in here. I'm not gonna lie. But like I said, it's the first movie, and when you do the sequels, you have to. We know for a fact you always got to go bigger. So
Absolutely. So, two last things with this movie, and then we definitely got to move on. So I love the line where Laurie asks Loomis, or Laurie says it was the boogeyman, like kind of like a question. Is that the boogeyman? And Loomis says, as a matter of fact, it was. And in this movie, he definitely shoots him 6 times. Absolutely. But in Halloween 2 opening, he shoots him 7 times. But we'll get to that. but a question I want you to think too, because I asked it to myself. Does Michael ever get hurt with his mask off? Because at the end of this movie, remember, he's like strangling Lori, and like they have a tussle and stuff, and the mask comes off. You see his face for a second. He has like the injured eye and stuff, and then he puts it back on, and then he gets shot. So it made me
The
ask.
mask is his strength.
I mean, you can
Remember,
look at
all these notes are pre-Halloween ends, so like I was just thinking all these
but,
weird theories in my head.
but you're also thinking weird series connecting that to what you've seen in the other films.
I know.
But I'm looking.
But I just want you to think about it. Has he ever
We're
been
talking
injured?
time, but for this film and this in a closed capacity, it's a good question.
Well,
And
yeah,
in
he
this
goes
movie, he's
over
not
and then he
Michael Myers.
disappears.
What's that?
I said, well, then he goes over the balcony and then he disappears.
Exactly. Mask still on.
I think if you look at it from a psychological point of view, the idea, injury is just pain. It's our receptors and our nerves reacting. And if he puts on the mask and in his mind, he is invincible, he can shut down mentally those pain receptors. So even though he's being hurt, he's not feeling it because all, touch is just the electric impulses and then pressure is what makes it either from something that doesn't hurt to, to being something painful. And, from a psychological point of view, if you can create that mental shield and he feels with his mask that he is something more, and we know he's a mental patient, he could be almost unstoppable, much like they talk about people on drugs who are getting shot and stuff like that, but they're not, their brains aren't, responding to it because their nervous system is not feeling the pain.
Or
So you're saying Michael Myers is coked out the whole time?
that PCP gives him that strength.
I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew.
We don't know what his antipsychotics were, or if they had
No, we don't.
antipsychotics at this time. I mean,
So in this movie, he in the end credits, he is not listed as Michael Myers. He is listed as the Shape,
which is very important, which
Very
gets
important.
ejected after this. Like after this, it all becomes about Michael. It doesn't focus on what he was supposed to represent. And that's why I love like Bryan's idea about going with that other person, where it was more about the shape of evil. And then my final line that I had pitched to you before Halloween ends about bringing it back around, that because that whole idea kind of gets ejected where it becomes more about like who he is, the idea. What would be interesting is like each Halloween, like the shape of evil takes on something else, and on this particular Halloween and the one before, it took on the shape of Michael.
So Deborah wrote, and Deborah Hill's recollection of putting this movie together. The script took 3 weeks to write, and much of the inspiration behind the plot came from Celtic traditions of Halloween, such as the Festival of Samhain. Although Samhain is not mentioned on the first film.
Samhain.
Huh?
If you're going to say it right, man. Samhain.
Pronounced Samhain.
What?
From Season of the Witch, Samhain.
It's Samhain because that's the Celtic. The letters change what they.
Anyway, it's my podcast, Samhain. Although Samhain is not mentioned,
He's pronouncing it like Loomis. Samhain.
That's how Hill asserts that the idea was that you couldn't kill evil, and that is how we came about with this story. We went back to the old idea of Samhain, whatever you want to say, that Halloween was the night where all the souls are let out to wreak havoc on the living, and then came up with a story about the most evil kid who ever lived. And when John came up with this fable of a town with a dark secret of someone who once lived there, and now that evil has come back, that's what made Halloween work.
Wasn't it also based off of an actual killer? Yeah.
A babysitter killer. Yep, back in the day, and it's loosely also based off of I think it was is it Black Christmas?
Yeah,
It was a little bit based off of that.
and it's heavily influenced by Tyler referred to I think James mentioned it too, but Psycho. There's a lot of Psycho-esque vibes, and it's because it was heavily influenced by Psycho, and then obviously Jamie Lee Curtis's mom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Can't
Janet
forget,
Leigh.
those connections.
Halloween 2, 1981.
Who trick or treats that early in the day? Jesus, people.
What?
3:30.
They do that crap now. They do that here in the Walbridge Village. It's like 3 to 5.
Jeez.
Stupid.
Okay, Halloween 2, 1981.
He's watching the movie, so he's pointing out that they trick or treat at like 3:30 in the afternoon.
Oh yeah,
Right.
we talk about that all the time. So Halloween 2 is a night. They came out in 1981. It takes place the same night as the first movie, so it's a direct continuation of that story. So Jure, what do you think about Halloween 2?
I like it. I mean, like I said, it's got Michael Myers in it, so I like it. I hate Season of the Witch. I will say that. So Halloween 3 doesn't even register in my Halloween mind.
You said it shouldn't even be on the list.
Or maybe you went with me because I hated Friday the 13th Part 2 so bad. But no,
Yeah,
Halloween 2.
We made you think about that movie.
A little bit, yes. But no, Halloween 2, I didn't hate it. Going back and rewatching it, there's a lot of it's not as good as the first one for sure. But I do like that they tried to go with that idea of making Lori his long lost little sister, and he
do like it.
I do. I mean, obviously because we have other timelines that show like it wasn't that, but I do like that because in the later installments, H2O and Resurrection, it keeps them together. You know what I mean? Like Lori and Michael, they're two yin and yang. Two sides of the same coin.
So you feel adding the personal connection helps the story along?
I like that. I mean, because they did it right, unlike Friday the 13th trying to incorporate that.
That's fair.
Yeah, the half sister by Part 9.
Oh yeah. When you listen to Part 2 of the Friday the 13th podcast, we're just like, where did this come from?
I'm looking forward to it because the second half of the Friday the 13th franchise is pretty wild. It took them a little longer to get there than it did the Halloween franchise to get there.
Yeah, you're totally right. Is there anything that you think sucks about this movie?
You're talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean the whole like just Lori one, the timeline, like this is all happening the same night, but it's still nighttime. Like, I mean, I get it, but it's like Dragon Ball Z 5 minutes on Namek, where it's literally like it would be because
like
when did Halloween
episodes in 5 minutes?
like when did Halloween end? Yeah. I mean, because it's like, when is this happening? It's happening at like 4:00 in the morning. The sun's not out, or it's not even rising yet. But that, and then Loomis starts to really like snap in this one. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like Loomis is a great character. Donald Pleasance is great, but dude, he just loses it like all the time. But I mean, it gets worse in Halloween 4. But yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I still like it's like I said. I grew up with the Halloween, and the gore wasn't like over the top. Still, it started creeping up a little bit in this one. Like where he burns them in the bathtub or the hot tub or whatever in the medical. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I still like it, but it does have issues.
Okay, James.
I mean, as a whole thing, I grew up knowing that Michael and Laurie were brother and sister. That's kind of just how it always was for me. So the fact that that was the case, it that didn't hurt it at all. And then of course, it went to like H2O and things like that. That's where that story continues to spawn, and it continues through the sequel trilogy. But Laurie is very much non-existent after this film.
Kind of.
Things that I
Sorry
don't
to
like.
interrupt you, James. It's kind of like Star Wars. How like the first Star Wars came out by itself was a great movie, and then the second one gets revealed. Like oh, he's his father. Like it continues the story, and it's this big mystery that comes and starts to complete the
Right.
story. I don't know.
Right. Which is
Sorry.
actually part of
This
no,
is
you're
a
fine.
discussion, boys. It's all good.
Yeah, no, I mean that actually is a point there. Like people have a problem with, as movies tend to expand the lore, that they quote unquote change things in the past. No, they actually add to the past. They're like they retcon
Retcon.
it. Well, no, they don't retcon it unless they change something. Like if you add to the story something that didn't exist in the past, something that doesn't contradict what is there, that's not a retcon. That is actually adding to the
Every
story.
time I
That is
change my
adding
underwear, that's
to
a
the
retcon.
lore. Yeah. So um it's just adding to the lore in this. And then they up the ante in this movie. The violence, specifically. I mean, the one of the most iconic kills from the first one is when he pins Bob to the door and gives him the head tilt. Michael Myers always has that head tilt after that. Like that's an iconic shot. Everybody knows that.
Mhm.
And that and the
Yep.
and the sit up,
Best kill of the whole movie.
Everybody yeah, everybody knows those everybody knows those moves. So but when Halloween 2 came out, this is post Friday the 13th part 1 and part 2. And they saw that the effects and the kills from Jason and even Pamela were escalated, especially from the first one, and that was ratcheted up in this film. So when it comes to this one, I mean, honestly, the only thing that I kind of don't like that much about this film is Laurie is even more helpless in this one than she was in the first one. And the first one is kind of just more of a sign of the times of women in film. She's the final girl, she's the heroine, but she's not like fighting back as much as she could be. As much
We're not going to
as
make her a
others
badass. Not
do.
yet.
Yeah, exactly. She's not like this badass. And then come the second one, I mean, yeah, she's injured and stuff like that, but she's more catatonic like Barbara from Night of the Living Dead from 1968. So
I think Laurie was a little bit more useful than Barbara and Night of the Living Dead. I mean, good God, she's freaking useless.
no, that's why they definitely did something more with her in 1990. And Tom
Yeah,
Savini
absolutely.
directed that movie.
Yes.
But Halloween 2, I very much enjoy Halloween 2.
All right. Director Patrick.
I think the one thing about Halloween 2 is like James just pointed out about Jason is this did come out, it took him a couple years to get a sequel, and it makes you kind of wonder, I'm not going to go into all the background, but of why and all that type stuff. Because, we all know the original idea was to do more of an anthology thing. But I think maybe because, you get here to this film. It is the start of the 80s. But you have Rick Rosenthal directing now. Carpenter's out as a director.
Yep.
And I think if you go back to, like I was saying, if you look at the Saw franchise, just as kind of a comparison, you had why did his name just escape me? Shoot. Come in as director, and he actually shapes that franchise because he directs like so many films. But it's here that we start getting changes, back to like what James was saying, you start to amp it out, the more of a gore film. You take away some of the suspense. Now you're trying to make a sequel, but you're also trying to copy Carpenter to a point. And I don't, this one's like, I think in my top 5, it is in my top 5 because I like it, but it definitely has some disjointment feel. And, it is interesting, because like it is the same night. Where are we going with this? Lori, like you said, she's even more useless. And they had to make it more gorier. They had to make it more that kind of thing that was emerging now here at the start of the 80s.
And how many times does Loomis die and show up again in the next movie?
But I mean, I like part 2. Like,
he's just like Michael.
It's got, it has it does pick up from the Friday the 13th in the fact that the beginning of this film is the end of the last film. Like, so it's telling you exactly where you are, what's going on. So it's really not until after the credits that the new movie begins.
Now, was that just a thing in the 80s? Like for sequels?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's something that started it, but like
sequels are weird because you got sequelized stuff before, but it wasn't until the 70s bleeding into the 80s that we really started making the sequel.
Well, maybe it's a turn of the decade where it's like, well, you saw this last decade, so we got to remind you what you saw, in the last decade before you jump into our new stuff. I don't know.
But I mean, like me and Bryan have talked about this, like with our Universal Monsters, is the only one that ever really got sequels was Frankenstein and the Wolfman. The rest were kind of like sequels, but not exactly. And they were kind of building their franchises back then. But you got to think, like, we look at like films, you got stuff that maybe tangentially were sequels here and there, but it wasn't until we started getting those movies of the 70s that then they started carrying over into the 80s, where we really started to develop what a sequel is, what a franchise is in film. Not going back to a book. I think books are always a little bit different. Because stuff that has sequels that were mining from books, but just creating a franchise or a sequel from another movie. I mean, think of it. Jaws falls into this right alongside Halloween and
yeah, but they reshot that stuff for the sequel, right?
No.
Like, wasn't that because Bryan just mentioned at the beginning of this, he said in the end he shot him 6 times in the first one, and then the second one he shot him 7 times, and I think they show him like running down the stairs when he
did they
reshoot stuff for the sequel, but that was supposed to be the end of the first one.
They have some insert shots blended with the footage. He also audibly says, "I shot him 7 times."
6.
It
says I shot him 6 times.
Yeah.
I shot him 6 times.
I shot him 6 times. But
you don't see him because you can look at when Jamie Lee shows up, you can tell she's not the same that you saw in the opening shots, because the opening shots were the footage from the last movie.
But in Halloween 2,
it was probably just an editing.
7 gunshots.
Always look for hair, dude. Hair is the giveaway. Yeah. Because a lot of times they have to start using wigs and stuff like that to try to make them match up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe she was wearing a wig while she was like laying in the bed. And I don't know if that's because she was shooting something else or what.
And that would explain why she spends so much time in bed not doing nothing.
So
they didn't want the wig to fly off?
I was just busy shooting
I gave her 6
else.
wigs.
Right.
6 weeks.
But I mean, like the film, like I like this one, like for the most part. But yeah, when they get to the hospital, like it definitely I feel like it takes the biggest turn. Um, and even though like it's 81, there's little things in it that feels like it's the 80s and not the 70s. I don't. But the thing is, I don't know with this one if they filmed it in the same place or they went somewhere else. Um, so I don't know. That's always to me like I hate when they make a movie and then they go somewhere and they film the sequel like in a completely different state, and it tears up the continuity to me.
It
Well,
loses
it's
the
like
whole
it's
feel.
like Nightmare 1, because we have all these palm trees in Ohio.
Yeah, well, I mean
We
that's
sure
one of my
do.
biggest problems with Halloween ends. Honestly, is it feels jarring because they shot the first two. It feels back to back, even though it wasn't in North Carolina, and then they shot the third one in Georgia, and you can tell,
Hmm.
And same thing with me and Bryan talked about this with Scream, where they've gone back to Woodsboro now twice, and each time they go back, it feels completely different because it's always a different location.
And you just film at Dre's house the whole time. I mean, you live in Woodsboro.
Almost, yeah.
Well, you pretty much. So, bunch of notes I have
Shoot
here.
things in the driveway with green screen like Zack Snyder.
Heck yeah. Hell yeah.
James, why are you bringing up the goat, man?
Did you hear
Always
my
got it.
Zack Snyder comment on the Friday the 13th podcast?
Which one? Or what
On the Friday
was
the
it?
13th podcast,
On part one.
um, I said, Halloween is a blueprint, and Friday the 13th, took from Halloween. And I was like, speaking of blueprints, they should get Zack Snyder to direct Halloween.
Oh,
Save
yeah,
the Halloween.
yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
They shot that.
Hashtag restore the Hollowverse.
Yeah,
Hashtag
right.
restore the Halloween.
They shot this around Los Angeles and in California, so it's possible they could have kept the same locations.
So notes I have here. Does this Halloween 2 start the trend of using happy songs for horror films? Because in the beginning of this movie, we get this Mr. Sandman song. Does this song even fit this story? Does it even make sense? And is this the start of using happy songs for horror in a horror way? Like,
I don't know if it is the start. I do feel like it doesn't fit. Like Mr. Sandman to me would be more like a Nightmare on Elm Street thing.
yeah,
Bring me a dream. Like that feels like you're juxtaposing the horror with the happy. Just like that old like was it 1940s Jeepers Creepers song, and then they play that in Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
Creepers, creepers, where'd you get
Dude,
those
I
peepers?
just want you to know that if I get murdered, I love you all. Like I keep hearing weird shit outside my door. Like I think I
You
can't tell if my neighbors are doing something
lock
outside.
that door.
No, it's unlocked because Jania is gone and she's supposed to be home, and she hates when I lock the doors in case I'm not around. So I'm in the living room tonight. That way the kids could have um the front room.
any minute now, Tyler's gonna go. I shot him 6 times.
I'm just saying, like, if someone comes busting into my house, I'm gonna drop my pants because nobody wants to fight a naked man. So you guys be ready.
When I say Nick Invisible Man balls, I'm telling you.
We're
I'm
not
just saying,
talking
like,
about Hollow Man.
I'm just saying, like, if people just like
Say-
bust in my house,
Bring it on.
But I think that's a good thought, Brian, because thinking a lot about like older films, like we mentioned Psycho and stuff like that, they didn't really use pop songs.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
I just feel that
And
Mr. Sandman's out of place here.
it
Like,
is.
like
I
it sounds
completely agree.
creepy. It does add a creepiness to it, but I just don't feel it makes sense.
It doesn't. If there was something about like the boogeyman or something like,
Yeah.
I think would make sense. But
Um.
yeah,
So moving on to notes. This movie is the first time. I mean, it's a sequel, so I mean, I expect it to happen too much. But it's the first time it is mentioned that Michael might not be human. And then I have a stupid note in here because it's me. Because this is just going through the whole movie chronologically. Did Harold want mayo or mustard on his sandwich? We'll never know. I took a screenshot in my notes of the knife that Michael takes with the ham sandwich, just sitting there with mayo and mustard. I'm stupid. I'm stupid.
I didn't get to comment like real quick. I don't know if I like or hate the she's his half sister storyline. Like I go with it because it was already established by the time I joined the franchise. But if that wasn't part of it, because I feel like that's one of those things you have to start to create a little bit more of why he's invested, why he's doing what he's doing to make the sequel work, other than like she's the one that got away kind of thing.
We
we'll bring that
totally
up
didn't
again.
get into that.
Hey,
Yeah,
actually, you're aware of how it's like they shot it for TV or something? Like I kept seeing and hearing this stuff about like, oh, there's like two different versions of Halloween 2. One that's like where they have all these extra scenes, and then I don't know which one I've seen. I'm pretty sure I own it on DVD, so I don't know which one that is, but it's
most
supposed to have
likely it's
extra
yeah.
scenes.
A lot of times
Oh,
in the past, they would do to air on TV, it had to be a certain time limit with commercials. So they would go back to things that they cut out of the theatrical. Sometimes they're just bullcrap scenes and put in to extend the time to meet the time requirement to edit it for TV. So it's
yeah.
long enough. Like I have a 3-hour cut of Superman the movie. That's the TV edit that has so many just like random shots, wide shots that slows down the pacing, because then they could show it over 2 nights in basically hour and a half of the movie, and then 30 minutes of commercials edited in, and they could show it over 2 nights for a special. So I think if I remember right, the Halloween 2, because I did read that stuff, it's just been a while, was very much similar to where it was just extra stuff added in, but I just don't remember what all was added in. I'll do some reading. Go, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. So, Night of the Living Dead was on TV while Harold was waiting on a sandwich. I thought that was cool. Another note I put in here is why doesn't he go back in the car that he had? Like the whole time in the first movie, he had that car, and he always knew how to drive, and no one knew he was driving that car. So why not just take the car?
Where did he learn to drive?
Where did he learn to drive?
James, shut up.
Where did he learn
shut
to
up.
drive being imprisoned his entire teenage and young adult life?
I have that answer for you when we get to Halloween 6. So hold on to that.
I think because ejecting him using a car starts to build more of the he's not human. It makes it a little bit creepier, that he doesn't need a vehicle. So, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so in this movie, in the first movie in The Mask, you don't see his eyes at all. They're black, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. In Halloween 2, you see his eyes. Like I have to say I hate that. I don't like being able to see Michael's eyes. And I think that they added that with like because they were adding this Laurie story and almost adding like a humanizing touch to him. Like, but you see his eyes in this, and I don't like it. What else I have? I had that. This is the worst hospital ever. It's short. It's short
So
staffed.
empty.
There's nobody there. Like that always killed me as a kid. Like, where the hell's the staff in this?
I mean, it's hard, though, right? Everyone's out trick or treating and at the parties.
At the party.
That's why the doctor came in all drunk and stuff.
That was my next thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yep, only one doctor on duty, and he's drunk. And all these people know Lori. Her father is a realtor. There's 3 nurses working on her. No other patients are in ER. And then I put a note in there. Where does the redheaded nurse go? because I thought as I was watching this, because I wrote these notes live. I was thinking for a second that one of the nurses survives, but obviously, but she eventually dies. What do you guys think of this Ben Tramer story added to it? That like Ben was wearing the Michael mask, and then he gets like my my notes here. I have, how fast would you have to be going in a residential area as a cop, mind you, to not only see this kid, not only not see this kid crossing the street, but hit him head on, crash into a van, and have an immediate explosion. How fast would you have to be
I
going?
mean, it's the 70s, dude. Cars just exploded randomly.
Well,
yeah. I mean, it's like
It's a Fast
spontaneous
and Furious
combustion.
movie.
Yeah, spontaneous combustion was normal back in the 70s. I don't know what we did to fix it, but
What I do like about it, Brian, is I like the idea that it was just a Halloween mask that you can grab off the shelf at a store. And we see that other people, like I wouldn't have minded a couple other people wearing that same mask out trick or treating. Just the idea that it was just a generic mask, and the cops are like hunting down these fake, like they see these other people and just building the suspense because we might not realize who the real Michael is.
well, I mean, at that time, like that's the same night. So Michael isn't like they have no idea that it's that mask. They have
They have
no
the
idea
description
that
from Loomis.
he's wearing like these overalls, you know?
They just have what Loomis said, and
Yeah.
that's why he's arguing with the one cop. So now they would all be looking for the mask, and having the fact that it's a common mask, it just makes it much more interesting.
It does. The the
Jeez, that's something I didn't think I'd see today.
right? Me either. Yeah, the
Continue,
scene
please.
where they friggin' take him out, just hunting him down. It's one thing that actually really repeats throughout the series. Really, no matter what timeline you get, honestly, I mean, honestly, except for H2O because that all takes place outside of Haddonfield or only in the house. But the people in Haddonfield are freaking nuts. Like they're assholes. The adults are crazy. They're violent, and all of the kids in every freaking movie are just shit people. They're so horrible to each other. I mean, kids are mean, but these kids are just certifiable assholes. They're all like little sociopaths.
Tommy's cool, man. Tommy's cool.
I put in the notes. I was like, in my notes as well. I put, where the hell is everybody when Lori's screaming? And like, if someone's screaming their head off and banging on your door, like, are you going to answer?
I know
Like, especially if you know this girl.
She's in a suburban neighborhood, all these houses, and she's
Still
pounding on doors, screaming, and everything. It's just
They
dark.
know her.
There's nobody
They know
there.
her.
Yeah, she's babysitting their kids. They know her.
Nobody answers the freaking door. But in the start of the second movie, all these neighbors start showing up, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Oh,
well, Brian, you guys are forgetting something. It's the 70s. Okay.
You're forgetting these nuts. That's what you're forgetting.
They went trick or treating at 3:30, dude. By sunset, they're in bed, man. They're tired.
maybe they're all.
They ran out of candles. They couldn't, no light bulbs.
They're all old people who went to bed, man.
Isn't it though in these small towns where everybody knows your name? Don't they just leave their doors open?
Well,
aren't they like
they're not glad
they're unlocked, right?
They're not glad you came.
This isn't Canada. I'd love to leave my doors unlocked. No.
Well, clearly, going back to what Bryan was saying about the hospital, this is the worst hospital. Don't they return to that hospital in Halloween Kills? Isn't that the same hospital?
Yeah.
Which is still the worst hospital in America.
Sure is.
It got decommissioned. It got destroyed, and they built a new one.
And in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, they return to the hospital as well. What else do I got here? I put in one of the greatest lyrics ever written in the world. Amazing grace, come sit on my face.
face.
Don't make me cry. I need your pie.
Wasn't that written by James Cole?
That was written by
Yes,
James Cole.
sir.
Everybody. Good God. Oh,
Before he was
what a
born.
dick.
Right?
This
Yeah.
bug
4
guy.
years before I was born.
Jimmy the AMT, he sucks. And Nurse Alves or Alvis, I might have pronounced the name right. She's the first and only black character in Halloween movies so far.
So far, I mean,
So far,
we're only 2 in, which is sad to say, but it was the 70s.
only black character that whole town. So
Well, the 70s was full of black movies, black exploitation movies, man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they were putting them in their own movies. They were like, yeah, maybe stay over there.
True.
all the time.
Right.
Not that was right. We're just pointing out
I was gonna
history.
say, were they in
Black
the suburbs at the
Dynamite.
time?
I just,
Sorry,
it's just, I just,
horrible joke.
they just don't get respect. Black people don't get respect. The first time in Halloween history that the address of Michael Myers is said, 45 Lampkin Lane, Haddonfield, Illinois, is the first mentioned and confirmed address of the Myers house.
Mm.
Repeat that one more time.
45 Lampkin Lane, Haddonfield, Illinois, is the first mentioned and confirmed address of the Myers house in Halloween 2. And then we get some like dream sequence with Laurie. Laurie's pretty much useless in this movie, but she's remembering visiting Michael as a child. We get this introduction of Laurie's his sister. It's just kind of interesting.
One thing I want to point out, like from a filmmaking point of view, is a lot of times when you have less money, you try to isolate your set, okay, and you try to bring it down. So the fact that so much of this movie takes place in this hospital is very intriguing, because when I think of Halloween 2, I even forget that there's stuff that happens before the hospital.
Yeah,
because it just feels
which
like
might be what I'm about to say now.
because it just feels like they're like, okay, well, we're making a sequel. Did they have more money? Like, were they investing money into it? Because it's like, you find a location, the hospital, and you shoot as much as you possibly can in that location, because that's how it helps keep down your budget. You're in one controlled environment. You don't have to use a lot of extras or whatever. So just you look at the first movie, how they're walking on the streets. You're in the different houses. This one just kind of feels like it shrinks down to being almost a single location. But
Next thing I have here is one scene in particular that I felt was really out of place and it was kind of weird is the elementary school scene, because like Loomis and them go this break in the elementary school. Now Michael has got shot 6 times, and he's walking towards the hospital. The elementary school is in the opposite side of town. Where does he get time to go to this elementary school? Did he go there first, like earlier in the day, and that happened during when Lori was out to school? Maybe Michael went in and did this, but there's a break-in the elementary school, and Michael apparently just takes a knife and stabs a kid's drawing of family, specifically stabbing where the sister is in the picture. And it makes kind of no sense. Like, if he walked there, like, why did he go so far out of his damn way just to leave a message? So it makes me think that it had to happen somewhere in the first movie for it to make sense for me. While he's driving the car and he's watching Lori in the school, maybe he breaks in there and then he does this. But he also writes on the board, Samheen. How's it say, guys?
saw one.
Sandwich, ham sandwich, and
It's similar to Sauron, like the Eye of Sauron, but Sauwan.
sucker, slippy, slappy, swan. Maybe it's on the briefcase.
Samsonite.
Samsonite. I was way off.
Samsonite.
I'm just gonna move ahead with this. So the movie ends with Loomis finally arriving to the hospital, and Michael and Lori are in this, I guess, surgical room, and Loomis lets open all the ether, and Lori shoots Michael in the eyes. He bleeds out of his eyes. Lori gets out of there. Loomis sets a fire and blows them both up. Michael walks out of the flames, totally okay. There's no way that Loomis could survive this explosion. No freaking way whatsoever. Michael is Michael, so he walks out in the flames. Then he falls over and dead, and we see the the mask kind of melting at the end there. He is still listed as the Shape, but this time he's played by Dick Warlock instead of Nick Castle, so a little different there. And this movie,
Also a really good Michael Myers as well. Because we are going to, as soon as we jump into 4, 5, and 6, that's like,
yeah, yeah, we're
You
getting
know,
there. We're getting there in just a moment.
it reminds me, Brian, of kind of like we talked about the old monster movies where they'd always kill the monster at the end, and then it's like the next writer's your turn to figure out how he didn't die at the last movie.
Wait, we needed money. Wait, we made money on this movie. We got to bring that mofo back. What did we
Well,
do?
did you guys know that there is Mustafa put something in a contract where you couldn't kill Michael Myers?
Oh yeah, he got
I
business
forgot all
savvy.
about that.
Yeah, he got business savvy.
So
So
it was pretty much like every movie he's had to come back.
yeah.
So.
Even though he dies, he has to come back.
I showed him 6, 7 times. In this movie, the Michael kill count. The Michael kill count is 15. In this movie, it's tripled.
Yeah.
that's triple your body count from the first.
And I also put that I do not like that Lori's a sister. I don't like it. Which I'll get into why as we move on.
But do they ever, Brian? I can't remember. We brought this up. Maybe James knows.
What's up, buddy?
Do they ever really explain what happened to her parents, the Myers parents? Like in the original series, like we know
He died
she
in
was
a car
adopted.
accident.
Did they? I just can't remember.
I think it's somewhere in my notes, but I can't delve into it at this moment.
I
But,
believe a couple years after Michael went into the got locked up, they died in a car accident and she went up for adoption.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, Finch is right. I think we know Lori faked her death when we get to H2O with the car accident.
We could get biblical on here, Brian, if you want.
Sure.
You know, you can look at Judith and Michael as a Cain and Abel, and Lori was supposed to be like their Seth, and that just didn't work out. I mean, you can look at that and draw some parables there if you want. Start digging some deeper rooted mythology.
That's too much. That's too much. Because then when we get into Halloween 6, and especially the producer's cut, I don't want to think about Cain and Abel or brother and sister.
Oh no. We're talking. That's what I'm saying. It's so weird because you can have such interesting insight and thoughts when you go 1 to 2, and then as you keep going, you have to keep kind of like, well, this now is not this. So I don't know. It's weird. Like you can be like, oh, this really works, and then as you get into like this doesn't work. But keep going, Brian.
I mean, it's interesting. I think the idea that it's his sister because, why does he want to kill his family so bad? A question that just looms over everything is like, why is he hunting his family? Why is he trying to eradicate all the members of his family? Because
But it's not even his family; it's his siblings.
But see, that's why I think 4 and 5 follows 1 and 2 very well. I know people don't like 4 and 5 as much. 6 throws it all out of whack, but I think 4 and 5 is a great follow up to part 2.
Yeah.
Because then I mean, obviously we're going to get into 4 soon, I think.
Right now.
Okay, can I jump in and just
Of course.
so obviously like 4, Laurie Strode dies in a car accident also, but she at this point has a daughter, and
But she could
in
have only
this
had a daughter 2 years post that. Post him
I
trying to
believe
kill
she was a
her.
young mother. I believe she was a young mother. Yes.
I think because after the events of this film, she got knocked up like right after this, right after 2. Like that night, that Halloween night, she celebrated.
I don't think
was
it was
time.
that soon
I
after,
just want to celebrate.
but so I
All
think
through the night,
then he ends up
I
having.
make love to you.
Isn't it that he has to kill his blood relatives in order for him to retain life, right? Isn't that? But I mean, that goes into part 6, I guess. But
Yeah, it's correct.
before part 6 ruined the franchise, part 4 was a pretty good movie. But Brian, go back
part
into
4
explain
was
it.
part 4 was watching it again. Part 4 is better than I remembered. And then it drops a little bit with part 5, and then a whole lot with part 6.
On Facebook, there's this Legacy of Halloween group, and some dude put his letterbox rank on the group. He put Halloween 4 as number 1. He put
Oh,
the
wow.
original Halloween as his number 4 in the ranking. He
My
put
question would be,
Ends. No, I'm sorry. Ends was number 1. Then he put Halloween Kills as number 2, and then he put Halloween 4 as number 3, and the original is number 4. And that man lost all credibility.
He's a Michael hater.
my question is like, what was he exposed to first? Because if maybe his entry point was number 4, I could see having
I
a
don't care.
love
He's wrong.
for it, but putting Ends first, yeah, he's
I don't care. All right. Halloween 4. We have had, so in real life, because we did Halloween 3, and Halloween 3 was its own thing, which we'll get to later. It is now 7 years. 7 years in real time, and we've had no Michael Myers since Halloween 2. It's a good break, but I'm sorry, it's 6 years since a Halloween film. So Halloween 4 came out in October 21st, 1988, and Halloween 2 came out October 30th, 1981. So yeah, about 7 years, like 7 years.
so we're all born by the time Halloween 4 comes out.
Yep.
Yeah, yes.
Yep. I would have been. Yeah, I would have been. Yeah, I would have been too. So this movie starts on October 30th, and we are finding out that Michael is in basically like a maximum security prison, and two people are trying to pick him up. 2 doctors.
I say he's still in Smith's Grove, isn't he? Just catatonic, because Loomis is
I can't
still
remember if
his
the doctors were
doctor.
from Smith's Grove or he was in Smith's Grove.
He's in Ridgemont Federal
Yeah,
Sanitarium.
there we go.
Ah, okay. That's
I
right,
turn-
Ridgemont.
I
That's
keep
right.
I keep starting each movie as we decide to discuss it.
You're cool. So where the heck was my stuff? Okay. So Loomis is still Michael's doctor. He should have been arrested for shooting a patient. I mean, come on. More importantly, how the hell can you walk out of a fire with just one scar on the side of your face?
He's got a
Like,
hell of a limp going on, so
hell of a but later in the movie he's like jumping over shit in the gas station. Like
I was
like
say he
he's-
loses his cane, he never has it again. He's limping around, but it doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. Loomis is a badass. Donald Pleasant is a badass. So Lori has been dead a year at this time. She supposedly died in a car accident. We find out that Lori has a daughter named Jamie, and she was adopted by a family that were friends of Lori. So this is what kills me. How can Jamie have nightmares of Michael if she's never seen him her whole entire life?
Well,
Unless
everybody knows who she is. Everybody knows that she is the niece, that her uncle is the boogeyman. They even tease her. That's one of the things in this movie is these freaking Haddonfield kids are assholes. Like, I mean,
The
they're
boogeyman, the
bullying her.
boogeyman.
Yeah.
well, I wonder if the psychic link had already began.
I mean,
That's
if we're
what
now that we're getting into this territory when we know we're kind of, yeah, I would say that it starts because doesn't it start right around Halloween time? Like that's when
yeah.
we're already starting to build a little bit more of that mythology of um the holiday does something, the
Right.
time frame.
Let me ask you guys a question real fast.
No.
Okay. Michael Myers, as a freaking 6-year-old, kills his family, kills his sister on Halloween.
Yep.
He escapes on Halloween and kills a whole bunch of people.
Yep.
Okay. Why in the Sam Hell, not Sam Hain, Sam Hell,
I was gonna make
are
that
you
joke.
going
You
to
knew.
move him on Halloween Eve? Like,
I'm like, if I was a judge, I'd be like, no, we're
right?
gonna wait till November 1st.
No, solitary confinement, locked up until November 1st.
I'm like,
Could wait
no,
till Veterans Day.
we're just gonna move him in November. He's he's not Michael. He has a love of Halloween. We were just gonna move him in November.
It's like Billy
But
on Christmas. You don't give him a candy cane to sharpen up and stab you in the throat with on Christmas. Come on.
but I'm trying to remember this, and Brian will have to help me out here because I know there's a lot of stuff that gets retconned. And who's pulling the strings of having Michael moved as we go into 4, 5, and 6?
It's that one doctor.
It's the one doctor.
Exactly.
I can't remember his name right now, but
So that means, if he's in charge, maybe it's him that's having it moved at this time. But I still feel like you would need a court order for such a patient.
Well, I mean, he was like the director of Smith's Grove, so like he could do anything.
So that helps, with that conundrum there.
I put a note in here. I was like, why wasn't this damn mask discontinued? And I asked the same thing about Scream. And like we talk about this all the time, Ty.
Well, with Scream, it's because they even say in the fourth one generation, because you got the Stab movies that came out that made it hype, so they had to sell the merchandise for the Stab movies.
Yeah.
And then one generation's tragedy is another's joke. So then, they make it out of like, but yeah, in Halloween, I'm like, it makes a little bit more sense for the company to be like, no. But I'm surprised there's not a line in it that the mask became infamous, so they just kept making it, and we see people wearing it all the time.
I sent a picture of the Halloween 4 mask to the chat. This is the worst freaking Halloween mask ever.
They should have just like teased his hair and put white makeup on his face. That would have been better than just the mask.
It's horrible. Like, I'm glad that the eyes are black again, but like
that's important to me.
It's, oh my god, it's so bad. Like, I hate it.
That is a ridiculous kill.
That's the only thing I like about it is that we can't see his eyes. I also wonder, is Jimmy the EMT from Halloween 2, is he Jamie's dad?
That's what I was suggesting with that's why I'm saying, like, right after, the end of Halloween 2, she was just like, take me. He's like, where? She's like, you know where.
What up, baby? I got a van. All the kills in this one are very over the top. Like, he throws a guy into an electric grid. It shuts down the whole power. Like, you can tell in this movie that they took things from Friday the 13th, and they're like, how can we make an over the top kill? Oh yeah, let's have him throw a dude into the whole freaking electric grid. Like, it's just weird. And then what else do I have? They have like a lynch mob that actually kills somebody. Like, just randomly kills like somebody that they thought was Michael, and it's totally okay. I put the question in here: should they have let Loomis die? in Halloween 2? Should they have not brought Loomis back?
I think it's a tough question, but I feel like I would almost say don't have Loomis come back. I know that Donald Pleasance helps ground the series and all that,
Sure.
but it really starts to show and diminish Loomis's capabilities as a doctor and as like just an ability for anything that, you know, he's continually having this issue. And Michael, like they're locked in this battle of good versus evil. But I'm just saying, like, he's already an old man. Like, I'm surprised they weren't training up kind of like who's Loomis's assistant to help take
Yeah.
over. Especially if you're looking at Halloween 4 as kind of being the first kind of soft reboot, because we're bringing in Jamie here and we're starting to build this idea of passing it on, or it's something with the family or whatever. So
I think he needed to be there just because. I think he needed to be there just because Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't in there anymore. You know, it's like you're getting rid of
Yeah.
your other star. You still need a legacy character to keep the franchise going. You know what I mean? And keep, have Michael have an adversary, like besides this little 10-year-old, 9-year-old girl, So I think his presence needed to be there for sure.
I'm with Finch on this. Like in horror franchises, especially slashers, I think it's so important that the killer, your antagonist has that you have a protagonist, you have someone you can root for. Um, does Loomis suck as a doctor? Yeah, totally. But Laurie
Yeah.
wasn't in this, and we had yet to establish a bit of a relationship with Jamie or Jamie's, adopted sister or whatever. So we needed someone that we could relate to add into this transition of this new story of Jamie the niece. So Michael dies in this one. They beat Michael with a bunch of rednecks and cops shooting him like 20 times with like high powered rifles, and he falls down a shaft. But then the movie ends with good old Jamie, his niece, who Michael was stalking this whole time. She kills her mom and with a pair of scissors, and she's wearing the clown costume that like Michael wore years before, and she's just like dripping blood. Quite an ending that will be copied fairly shortly. No, wait, hold on. We talked about this in the Friday the 13th one of like who copied who. I would say that Friday the 13th would have copied this one. To copy the Tommy Jarvis type thing.
I think we established during the Friday the 13th episode that Friday the 13th actually did it first. So
did first. The Tommy Jarvis was going to replace Jason thing, right?
Yeah, so Halloween copied Friday the 13th.
Copied then. Absolutely. Yeah, because Halloween, because part 4 would have been before 88 at that time. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have my Friday the 13th notes. I know I pulled up Halloween statistics and I pulled up Friday the 13th at the time. So I think you're right that Halloween copied that concept of transferring to a new killer.
I like that idea. That's actually, I think I mentioned it in the Friday the 13th episode that I like that transference of evil aspect of stuff. That's why Halloween Ends could have been great, but
Halloween Ends, if you would flip that movie around.
Halloween Ends later.
I know, but Finch ain't going to be here for it.
That's true. He won't. Go ahead.
So
Finch.
My thing is, if you took Halloween Ends, Finch, and you flip it around, you move that final scene, and that's your opening. And then, what you do is you have like the transference, and then the rest of the movie is kind of building the Corey story. And then you have like your final showdown with Corey at the end. Instead of having it all Corey front loaded and then Michael at the end, you just flip it around. I think you would have had a better story. But
Yeah.
I like this one. I like it starts to open the idea of there being something connected, familial. We actually it kind of puts the character, with Jamie is like we look at her, you can compare it to young Michael, and now we're actually getting to know the character. And it's almost where you can look at it in a way of being the story that we didn't get of Michael. Because if Jamie cracks at the end of this one and becomes the killer, it's like, kind of like Michael cracked at the end of his. But we never got his story. But Brian, do you remember what's significant about number 4
Yes.
that you and I've talked about?
Yeah, it's something I might be saying in a second. Maybe.
Word.
Maybe. Oh, you're fine, James. Go, James.
Yeah, she's a scream queen. She's one of them. She's a good one.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
that sounds kind of sexy. That's scary to me. Scare me, baby. Um, but I think that this movie could have been good. I think that Michael's mask hurts the film. Considering the poster for the movie had the first mask that looked freaking awesome, and then we get this load of garbage or whatever it is that makes Michael look ridiculous. Um, Go on. Oh,
Ugh.
They must have ordered them from Timu.
when you order from Wish.
we got these masks on Wish. Um, Now, I also have here that this movie, he's not listed as the shape in credits. He is listed as Michael Myers, played by George P. Wilbur. I think probably signifying, Michael Myers has returned. The return of Michael Myers. So we're putting Michael Myers as the list here. He's not called the shape. Um,
Big mistake.
what's that? Yeah, no, I think 4 is a little bit better than 5. Um, but sure. Sure. Yeah, it's I don't know. Anybody have any last thoughts with four they want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 is the first it's one of those rules that I told you about with horror films. 4 is when we actually now have our moment where we turn and we're on Michael's side.
Yep. Yeah. There. Yeah. Yeah.
4 is when we are now cheering when Michael kills Brady because he cheated on Jamie's stepsister, who
Yep.
we were, aligning ourselves with. So now we're finally like, yeah, you get him, you punish him. And that's a big step in any horror movie where you have the moment where all of a sudden you're on the killer side.
I mean, I still like Jamie, and I was rooting for her and her sister the whole time.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, but that's where it starts. Like, that's the moment where it starts. Where we're now coming to the theater now, and that goes back to what Bryan said about, not having a strong lead protagonist that goes through the films, is because then you start aligning yourself with the killer. That's why you're there. You're not following the protagonist journey. Now you're just like, all right, kill him, get him.
I mean, but I guess if you want to go with that, it is called The Return of Michael Myers. So it is his movie. Unlike Friday the 13th movies, I mean, except for part 6, maybe where Jason lives, you know.
The best one. The best.
Yeah, arguably, but yes. Uh, no, it's a great one. Yeah, no, it's just, in my rankings, the remake was the better, but we'll go. That's a go listen to the Friday the 13th episode if you haven't already, guys.
You know
But
why? We'll make it first. You know why.
yeah, but yeah, no, it's okay. I lost my train of thought, but no, yeah, it's the return of Michael Myers. So if you're coming to see, like, I didn't see it in theaters, I was way too young. But you go to see it in the theater, you're going to see Michael. You're rooting to see him kill people. That's the point.
Yeah.
At that point, at least.
It was on Earth too. That's why.
Yeah.
So, Bryan, what's the title of the 5th movie?
The 5th movie is The Revenge
It
of Dread Pirate Roberts. The Revenge of Michael Myers. So this came out in this one came out in 1989, a little under a year later. Like it just went boom, boom, boom. This one is yeah, right. I'll just bang them out. This one had a different director as well. Like so, Halloween 4 was directed by a guy named Dwight Little. This one was directed by Dominique Owen Gerard. It's a different director. So different consistencies. Um, so in this one, he falls down the shaft. We get a little recap before he falls down the shaft, and he survives by crawling out of the mine just before they threw dynamite in it. trying to give us some belief that Michael might still be mortal, but he survived a freaking fire and being shot 6 times and then shot
I know
20
mine.
something times. um, but when I counted like 20 sometimes. I thought they might have pulled out an RPG there, like
It wasn't as bad as Jason with the FBI.
yeah. It's just it's weird. So when he's laying on the table in this hut, so some dude that lives in the hut in a very weird place at Haddonfield, I don't know.
Mhm.
He has a parrot. I think maybe Jimmy Buffett decided to save him, but but the dude has Michael and nurses him to health for like a freaking year. Like Michael's in hibernation for a year. So it makes me wonder, like when I was watching this, it made me wonder too, does Michael like does his power just shut off? Once we get to November 1st, did the power just shut off?
We talk about
No,
that
we
in
we
our.
did yeah, we definitely did.
We went into a whole
Whole
great explanation about that
well,
building
yeah,
up to end.
tomorrow's gonna be fun when we do the recording for ends. But this is the first time also while Michael's laying on this table that we see the tattoo, the mark of the thorn. This is where it all begins. So it's located right under his hand, right in his wrists, right here. And the symbol, how it looks, it is a triangle with a line under it going extending a little bit. So it's the first time we see that mark. Um, and they also established in this movie that Jamie and Michael have a psychic link. That Jamie can see what Michael sees, Michael can see what Jamie sees. Jamie, ever since she killed like her mom, she is unable to talk, which kind of sucks as she's supposed to be the protagonist of this movie and she's not talking. Like it's just it's yes, they retconned that. I actually my apologies. Yeah, that was my note as the next note I had scrolling. Um, we get a new mask that looks even worse. Well, it looks almost like a carrot top type mask. Like it has weird orange hair, but the mask is extremely wide. It looks way too big for his head. It's a freaking horrible mask. Uh, yeah, I think this is the worst mask. Um, like it's not even close to the mask they had in four. Like even if it's sat in a year, it wouldn't look like that. Um, and Loomis becomes Jamie's doctor like almost immediately. Like how did he get that job? I don't even know.
Because he's the
Um,
only doctor working. It's like conflict of interest. Like,
um, I also have a note in here like if you're gonna kill Rachel so early in five, why didn't you just kill her in four? Like Rachel was kind of like our protagonist in four, and then she dies so quickly in five. Um,
makes me wonder if the actress.
yeah,
It makes me wonder if like she just didn't want to do it. Like she signed up for it, and then after doing 4, she's like, okay, I don't want to. I don't want to do this. Just kill me off.
I'm out. Peace, I'm out.
Maybe she had a bunch of offers come in after 4, and they're like, nah. And then so she got out of 5.
And we spend all this time with Rachel's friends who aren't even main characters, and it's stupid. And Loomis pretty much abuses Jamie. Like he just starts shaking the shit out of her. Like, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? I shot him 6 times. Where has he been? Like,
Liz.
what's
I mean, probably Donald Pleasant. Like, I want to do something different. Okay, just be a psychotic old man. Got it.
it's Yeah, it's just it's so weird.
I'm looking at images of the mask, right?
Yeah,
And then like the cover art for Halloween 5 shows the original mask, but then you get to the movie and it's
it did
the
the
other
same thing
mask.
for the poster for
Yeah.
4. We get the original mask. It's looking great, and then we get this just monstrosity garbage. Yeah, absolutely, Finch. Absolutely. Um, I put in here too that we don't see the Myers house in Halloween 4 at all, but we see it in 5. And it looks absolutely nothing even close to the 78 version. It's going back on what Tyler said. Like, you're going to film it somewhere else. Okay, we get it. But at least do something in, like, on site in the studio that at least makes the inside kind of look like it used to. Like, do something consistent here, people. Like, what the hell? We also start seeing this dude with steel toes, like steel toed boots, get off a bus. This mystery person just showing up in town, which he'll show up later of who the heck that guy is. And this dude does have the same tattoo of Michael of the thorn tattoo. So he's definitely like a cult member. Um, This is also the first and only time in Halloween 5 that Michael wears a different mask. So in this movie, he puts on the mask that one of Tina's or Tina her name boyfriend. Yeah, yeah, right. Um, it's the second time he's called the Boogeyman, but it's the first time he wears a different mask. First and only time Michael wears a different mask. Oh well, other than if you count the clown mask in the very beginning. Um, what else do I have in here? So basically, what we got here? Uh, Worst Michael, yeah, worst look. I think that's the worst looking Michael Myers, in my opinion. Um, and then we see this scene kind of near the end too of Jamie talking to Michael, and Michael takes his mask off, and he sheds like a freaking tear. Um, what does Jamie say? She says, Uncle, let me see you. And he takes the mask off with no hesitation whatsoever. And he sheds a single tear. I don't know what the hell is going on here. And she's like, you're just like me, Uncle. You're just like me. He sheds a tear in one of the most stupid moments in horror history ever. Like, where is his scarred face with the fire? Where is his shot out eyes? Like, does the Myers house heal him? That's when I started thinking about that too. Like, does the
He's
mask
healed
It's
every
the
heal?
Halloween.
tattoo. The
He's healed
tattoo
every.
is what heals him.
I mean, now.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean,
you're right.
this is where we can start digging into like the supernatural, um, and the idea more about the he's mysticism. So basically, every Halloween, like he just gets healed, rejuvenated. It's not 100%, but he gets healed enough to
Because
function
the
out what needs to
mark
be
of
done.
Thorn. Yep, sure do. Yes. Yep. You're
I do
absolutely
like
right.
some of the kills though in number 5. Like I think it's the farm one, the one in the haystack. You know, I mean,
That was a good one.
obviously, for my reasons, it that scene starts off pretty nice. And then, but I also like when he does put that other mask on in the car and he's just like, I don't know, like he's funnier, you know what I mean? But it's like it's still kind of on character with Michael from the first movie where he's in the ghost with the glasses.
Yeah,
So it's a callback.
it's definitely a callback. Michael loves the chase. Michael loves messing with his prey, if you will, and like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. He loves to watch.
I was gonna say when it comes to five is the one I've seen. I've only watched like once. But 4 and 5, like my biggest memories with them was those were like the ones that AMC like had the rights to. So it seemed like they were always showing 4 and 5. I just remember them being advertised all the time. And I feel like, and I'll say this eventually, I'll save it, but I feel like the Jamie storyline was decent enough in this one, but 6 just burns it all to hell.
Yep,
Yeah.
great segue though.
So this movie ends really weirdly. Like they arrest Michael, they put him in a jail cell, and then Steel Toe Joe, as I called him, he shows up and he shoots up the whole police station and he sets Michael free.
I mean, they had to compete with 80s action movies, so they're just like, this is for all the Schwarzenegger fans.
Terminator.
Terminator, yeah, exactly. And it ends on such a freaking cliffhanger that we don't get an answer for it for like 6 years, nearly 6 years, until we get to Halloween 6. Um, it's a huge cliffhanger, and in this movie, it also doesn't say shape; it says Michael Myers, played by Donald L. Shanks. So
Yeah,
we get
they pretty much
another person playing Michael.
they eject the shape is no longer a concept now. It's just Michael.
Yeah, it's like they just threw it out the window. Um, I don't know if this movie was worse than 4. I think that 4 can stand alone better. The Mask is barely barely better because the Mask in 5 is just so large and just so awkward. Um, and I think this whole movie is freaking horrible. But I think like if you don't watch The Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween 6, like almost immediately after, then it makes this movie even worse because you end on such this cliffhanger and you're like, what the hell is going on? But then you watch The Curse of Michael Myers and you're like, oh, that's why they did this. Oh, I have that in here.
But
I
in
have it in here.
Halloween 6, are we now breaking the timeline where the events are not happening in the time in which it's released? because all the other movies, like, they're lining up with the year that it's released. Other than the second movie, because it's supposed to be 78 still.
Well, okay, so going right into Halloween 6 here, The Curse of Michael Myers. I have notes for the original cut and I have notes for the producer's cut. But so to wait 6 years after such a cliffhanger ending of who the hell the steel toe guy is, I think that's quite a shame.
But isn't that because the rights, like, they couldn't get financing, because that's when it shifts over to Miramax?
It did shift over to
Or
Miramax.
was it Miramax or Dimension?
Dimension, kind of both.
Because that's another thing with. Because that's another thing when we get to this one is it's now, yeah. Some of these franchises have that problems. Some of these franchises that started out like the Terminator, where the first movie was a low budget. As it goes on, the rights get bounced around.
I think we're still on 5, or we already moved to 6.
I moved to 6. Yeah.
Okay, well, I know you're saying that like you have to watch this kind of like directly following episode 5 or part 5. I
Yeah.
think 4 and 5 by themselves works, but yeah, obviously if you go right in order 4, 5, 6, it works as a really good trilogy.
Yeah.
Even though
The
it's
Thorn trilogy, if you will. Yeah.
yeah, even though it's technically parts 3 or 4, 5, and 6. Yeah. So
It's like, and I beg the question: when did Halloween jump the shark? Did Halloween jump the shark with 2, with having Lori be the sister? Did it jump the shark in 5 with introducing this Mark and all that crap, or the Jamie psychic link, or was it Halloween 6?
I think it's when they tried to start mimicking Friday the 13th too much and the supernatural elements that Friday the 13th started introducing.
So that would be, I think that
Amen.
would just be 5. Like, that'd be kind of 5 into 6. Like, that's where, because I mean 6 is full on jump the shark.
Full
I think
on.
5 is we're right there at the precipice of it. And no, kills can stay. You could end at kills and not go into ends, because end does not do a good job.
No,
but
I don't
we'll
think you
do that
can.
for tomorrow. Oh, I think exactly. It also depends on which cut you watch too. But we'll save that for tomorrow.
I don't think with either or. Um,
I would say, if going back to Brian's question about when did it jump shark, I would say 4, because it does seem like that's when they started introducing this trilogy. Like, I think there was a plan, and it was, I mean, obviously they took over, and obviously he wasn't a shape anymore. He was Michael Myers, which I think it's in Halloween 2018 when she references him. Jamie Lee Curtis does re-reference him as the shape. So,
Oh yeah, it comes back then because they're taking it back to the original
yeah.
concept.
So I think obviously or I keep wanting to call them episodes.
It's fine.
Part 4 is
Revenge of the Myers.
right. Is obviously when they started jumping the shark, because that's when they introduced the curse, kind of like maybe
Yeah.
I don't know if we see the tattoo or anything, but obviously having a bunch of new cast, and I believe they introduced that doctor that kind of, you know, sorry,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say like, yeah, 5 is when it happens. 6 is when you realize, oh crap, we're in it. 4 is when they're still at the point of we can make this work, but we're gonna go huge. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. Yeah, I totally agree. So let's get into 6 because 6 is woo. um, so if Jamie was 9 in Halloween 5, and this is 6 years later, if we want to think about real time, are we trying to say that Jamie is 15 and pregnant?
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing.
Because doesn't it give it, because all the Halloween movies gave us the date when it's like October 30th or October 31st, and it gives us the year.
Yeah,
So does it give us the year of 95?
I don't remember seeing a year 95. I don't. Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, the chick playing Jamie in this is clearly not 15. She's definitely 20 something. Um,
Or they could have just not done this opening and got rid of this whole idea, but whatever.
um, it also seems that and then they introduce these like cousins of the Myers in 6. Like, where were these cousins in 4 and 5?
Yep.
Yeah, the Shrews. My apologies. Um, yeah, where the hell were they? This is Paul Rudd's first film.
Paul Stephen Rudd.
Oh, Stephen Rudd. My apologies, Tyler. I'm so sorry. And he plays a pervert, pretty much. um,
Mm.
so then in 1980, so after Halloween 5, they banned Halloween in Haddonfield. Like,
That makes sense.
finally. I think the mask looks a little bit better on this. I think this one's just like kind of a improved 5 mask, if you will. Um, but it's still a little different. Um, it's kind of the same as 5 though.
That's how we like it, man. That's what happens to all of us as we hit
that boy
middle age.
Theo.
We get thick, man. Well, we all know that as we hit middle age, we get fat, and then as we start to get old and die, we get skinny again. So I'm just waiting until I hit my 70s and 80s. I'll slim back down.
um, so this movie also has a little bit more of a Halloween feel. There's actually houses decorated for Halloween in this.
I'll give you that,
Uh,
yeah. And which is funny because it kind of fits into the story. Like this is the first time they're bringing Halloween back, so everyone's going like full out. So it actually does look like people are celebrating the holiday.
yeah. Um, and also, like I put a note, if Laurie's cousins live in the Myers house because they're poor, it does play into the concept of Michael not liking anyone in his house. like like
That's
um
true.
And why is Tommy living in a boarding house in his 20s? That's kind of weird.
I just look at he's psychologically damaged, traumatized, and maybe it's just his way of staying right there on the street in the neighborhood because he can't move on or something. And
Inept. And he had like he does that Disturbia thing where he's like always looking out the window with the either the telescope or the binoculars.
The the Danny kid. Yeah, so bad. So okay, so I want to go into the explanation of all this weird stuff. So um, make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so it is revealed in this movie so much of the Halloween mythology is revealed in this movie. Um, so it is revealed that the head of Smith's Grove, Loomis's buddy, boss, whatever, by the name of Dr. Wynn, is actually a cult leader called of the Cult of Thorn. It is revealed that so what you see Wynn, the character Wynn, for the first time in Halloween 1, when Loomis is like, who the hell taught him to drive? Someone must have taught him to drive. It is revealed basically that Wynn taught him to drive. That the leader of this cult has watched over Michael from the very beginning. And when Michael went out and killed people, that Wynn is the one that kind of took him, and the curse of Thorn kind of healed him. And what this curse of Thorn is basically, and someone correct me if I'm not remembering right, but what the curse of Thorn basically is that someone is born with this birthmark, and they basically are cursed to kill their whole family. And when they kill their whole family, I forget what happens. Like the power would then transfer, but it's just something like that. I'm trying to remember because I can't read all my notes at once. But basically, this curse keeps him alive, and it rejuvenates his power. Can anyone remember anything more?
it's
Because
something like that, which makes me wonder, like, he was born under it. Like, is he the original? Like, or was there someone before him that the cult had? Or, did this whole thing originate with him?
I know they're trying
Um,
to like make clones of Michael. They're trying to clone because they show later in it that they're trying to recreate Michael's DNA. So
yeah.
that's why they want this baby of Jamie's.
Yeah, this one is just too far. Like, it's the curse. Like, yeah, this one's too far. Like, I would have, if they wanted to go supernatural, I would have just took, like, going back to the concept of the shape of evil as more like a spirit that just possess somebody, and it just happened to possess Michael at that time. But this movie just is too much.
It's just hold on. They're like in this movie also just kind of just going into the producer's cut just a little bit. Um, there it is. Okay. That's it. That's what it is. Yeah. And Danny is like his cousin or nephew. No, he's the Strode's kids.
Well, technically, it would be his son,
I don't think
nephew,
I don't think
nephew's son.
former roommate, baby.
So there's no blood relation, really.
Hold on one second. And then, so in the producer's cut, it's added in basically, long story short, in the producer's cut, it's basically said that that this Stephen baby, Jamie's baby is Michael's, that they had Michael rape Jamie, his own niece, to keep the bloodline as pure as possible and transfer the abilities into this Steven baby. Freaking ugh. Ugh. That's what I said. Yep. Why do we need this baby? That's one of my first notes. Why do we need this freaking baby even existing? Why do we need Michael to rape this chick?
Well, I saw here it says an earlier draft of the script portrayed Michael Myers as a sexual deviant, which explains the plot point of him impregnating his niece Jamie. However, it was dropped after being too far fetched and unlike the character. So
I think the whole thing period here is too far fetched and unlike the character.
I was having a little trouble hearing you there, Tyler. Say it again.
I said the whole thing here is too far fetched and unlike the character.
This is where it gets so horrible. And then like Tommy, our good old Paul Rudd, starts studying runes, like old Celtic runes, and he finds out that basically he can take these runes to trap Michael. And if Michael's trapped in a circle of these runes, Michael can be destroyed. So they throw that in there. And then they throw in that Wynn wants Loomis to take over leadership of the cult to watch over Michael. And Loomis is like barely hanging on to life. Like, how's he going to be able to watch Michael even longer? But also in this movie, the runes get changed, and like Wynn dies, and the curse of Thorn passes on to Loomis to kind of take over Michael from then on. It's this movie is just batshit crazy. Um, I really hate it. So
you
when
know they wanted Christopher Lee to play that role.
to play Win,
Yeah,
yeah, that would have been good. That would have worked better. Like that would have worked much better. Um, I feel like in this movie they jumped a whole ocean of freaking sharks. Like it was so out of it. A
This
lot of
is
my
the
notes
Jaws
have audio
revenge.
clips, so I apologize why my notes are a little bit of a mess here. Um,
This is the Jaws revenge of
huh?
Halloween movies. This is Jaws revenge of Halloween movies.
Jaws revenge of Halloween movies. Well, they call him the Shape again. That's another thing that doesn't make sense. He's played by George Wilbur again, but they call him the Shape once again in this movie. Like, so guys, is there anything good about this movie? James, is there anything good and redeemable about freaking Halloween Curse of Michael Myers? Yeah. Yeah. Some
Yeah,
parts are better.
they use different scenes. So it's not just extended. Like they use alternate takes and scenes, and even I think different music in certain parts too. So it's re-edited. Um,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Sure. Hell yeah, buddy. Happy birthday to me. I get a James podcast.
it'll be called
What are you going to call it?
it'll it'll just be called James. It's called James Does It, one movie at a time. James does it one at a time.
Coal mining.
One one scare at a time. 45th year anniversaries of franchises.
Yeah, that's the only reason that I've done it because like October, Friday the 13th, like I had to throw that in there, and then the 45th anniversary I had to. But that's what I did with Gravely Amusing, and just I was like, what am I going to talk to? Kind of going through horror history, and Universal Monsters, was the first, so that's why I started there, and then just threw in little specials here and there. So I mean, season two, I'm probably going to do creature features. Probably going to be all about like aliens and bug-eyed monsters because that's kind of where the 50s went. Yes, that's awesome, man. Um, I mean, I don't know if I think of a name for you, I'll shoot it to you. Heck yeah, I want this.
Well,
Heck
good
yeah, I
luck
want
with
it.
that.
Sweet.
It is. Yeah, it's not easy. Doing a podcast is not easy.
A few. A few.
Well, thanks for being part of my gravely amusing. One movie at a time. Well, thanks for being on gravely amusing. I mean, come on, thank you. Yes, you will. So is Dre, is there anything good about Halloween 6?
The intro to Paul Rudd, obviously. The this actually was his first acting gig. Even though Clueless came out a year before, it was
Yep,
released
I
in
was gonna bring
theaters.
that up.
It was just that this was filmed before Clueless came out, so but it was released after. So that other than that, that's really the only saving grace. I mean, it was Donald Pleasance, it was Donald Pleasance's final film, which kind of tarnished, his. It's like, oh, like that's the movie he ended on,
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunate. Um, but I mean, I don't know. It's part of the Halloween franchise. I grew up. I honestly though, I do remember that I didn't know this movie was a thing. I didn't know this movie even existed until really late.
didn't know like he did. So what Finch is trying to say is that he did.
I'm just gonna pick up right there, and say love is blind, people.
Love is
Love is
blind.
blind.
Love is blind. Sometimes you take the early flight home from San Diego. Finch wasn't able to talk. The kids are being a little rowdy there, but I think what Finch is trying to say is he didn't know it really existed. He probably saw the movie poster at the local farm, or well, in Western Pennsylvania in Greensburg, where Finch and I grew up, there was a pharmacy called Farmore, and when the movie came out, they had like a video store in the pharmacy, and they had like the Halloween 6 Curse of Michael Myers poster like everywhere in there. Because I remember seeing it on VHS. Like that's in my head so much. Just the movie poster in VHS. Um, but Paul Rudd, saving grace, this movie makes it only
I do
watchable.
own this movie though on DVD.
You
So
do own it on DVD?
yeah, I mean it was cheap, so I got it. But
The only
Heck
thing
yeah.
that I'll say about this one is it's not a saving grace, but the only thing that I like about this one is back to what we said, that they actually made it look like it was Halloween. Like everyone's decorated and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. Like it feels. Other than
Totally.
that, I would honestly, if I was watching this series, I'd just skip this one every time. Like if I had to watch it for a podcast to do a conversation, sure. If I was showing it to someone new, I just let them watch it by themselves.
When I get to the '90s like section, when I get to the '90s and gravely amusing and yeah, that's when I'll watch it again. But I don't think I'll
But
watch it again.
it is worth pointing out, like you just said, this is part of the '90s, and we know how horror was
1995.
changing, and what was going on in the '90s.
What the hell were they thinking? Speaking of changing, they did a reboot in 2007 of the Halloween franchise. So we're not gonna go to H2O just yet. We'll talk about that in part two. But we're going to go to a different timeline here because it kind of tells the same story of what we already talked about in the original. We're going to go to Rob Zombie's Halloween. So I think we'll have more to say about the official reboot than we will of Halloween 2 of Rob Zombie's. We'll see. But Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007. Rob Zombie gets the Keys to the Kingdom of Halloween. Um, Basically, after Resurrection happened and kind of failed, which we'll get onto it, um, Rob Zombie takes over. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm not a big fan of Rob Zombie movies. I'm not. I didn't think it would. Um, I think like I like some of Rob's music. Some of his songs are just, I mean, they're bangers. They're pretty cool. Dragula, Living Dead Girl. Um, like he's got some cool stuff. But he tends to be overly gory.
Yeah.
It's very overly sexualized. And I
Yeah.
don't really like overly sexual stuff. Um, I can deal with gore, but for me, it kind of like has to make sense. If like it has to, it can't be so much gore for the sake of gore, like just because we want this to be well over the top. Like it has to kind of make sense. Like in the movie Saw, like them sawing his foot off, that gore made sense for the
Yeah.
story. But like, yeah, but so when Rob got the keys of this kingdom, I was worried. Like I was 21 when this came out. This was like right before I met my wife, but like right when I was kind of like being a youth pastor and stuff. So I had to make sure that no one knew that I would watch this type of movie. You know what I mean? But I went to see in theater. I don't know who I saw it with. I probably went to see it with my friend Mike Manello at the time, but I was blown away by this movie. Like I knew his his reputation with House of Thousand Corpses and Devil's Reject stuff, but when he did this one, I really liked the psychology he brought into it, and we'll get into that. But James, like, did you think that this was a worthy reboot, or do you think that it sucked and he shouldn't have done it? Sure, yeah.
Yep. That's why I don't like the unrated version.
You're welcome. Mhm. The janitor? Jenny. Oh no.
Joe Grizzly.
Oh, that guy. That guy. Yeah, he was in Day of the Dead. No, of the Dead. Or that guy. Yeah, Gil Grizzly. Hell yeah, Tyler. What do you like about
Um,
this movie? What didn't you like?
well, I mean, this one I saw right. School had just started, and I went with a bunch of people from my Christian college, and we came back and watched the original.
My man.
So Brian's talking about hiding it. We were like, we're going to see this. I scared my brother. It was hilarious because I had the theme song playing, and I was just standing at the end of the hallway in the middle of the night, and then I just chased him to the bathroom. It was hilarious. This one, my thing is, Rob Zombie brought a rawness and, like you said, the psychology. He made both a prequel, a sequel, or a prequel and a remake in the same movie, and I think he did it very effectively. My only problem is he made his character so much like himself, where everyone wore the tattered jeans and faded band shirts, and um they really just made they all looked like they were going to a Rob Zombie concert. It's a long hair, and I think he made some of his characterizations of we kind of ditched more of the innocent Lori and made it a little bit different, but that's updating, I think, for the time. um I agree, I like the theatrical cut better than the um unrated. And you say, I at this point it needed a full-on reboot. We'll touch on what they kind of did with the retcon soft reboot tweak again, because there's a lot that
Sure.
was changed during that process. So at this point they needed a full-on clean sweep. um and I think trying to do something a little bit more, because at this time we had settled on that Halloween is Michael Myers. So given this kind of psychology background of what happened to this kid, where did he go? And then I think one point that I liked at first was the idea that they have, where basically um he was, in a way, Michael was protecting his sister. And I like that she was already born, so Michael had a sense and knew of her, because there's that scene where he takes the mask off and he's presenting himself to her, and then it's her rejection that kind of, you know, um, he goes after her then. So I think that was a nice little tweak and everything. And then where the origin of the mask comes from is kind of cool too. Um, back to, but yeah, I mean, yeah. I've only watched H2 I watched each cut once. It's been a long time. And I appreciate, like James said, I appreciated what he was trying to do something different, break the cycle, not repeat the same patterns. If he was going to do this, I've listened to him talk about it. He didn't want to do a sequel. He wanted to end his Halloween so that it really was supposed to be her shooting Michael in the head, and that was it. And that was how it ended. But of course, like you said about McCod, the studio. So Rob said, if I do a sequel, I'm doing what I want. And he did. He came back and did his sequels the way he wanted. I didn't really like the other two. And I say the other two because like I said, the two different cuts. But yeah, I didn't really like H2 at all. I've tried to block most of it out of my memory, so I can't comment much more than that on that film.
Finch, what did you like about Rob Zombie's Halloween 1, and what didn't you like?
I really like that movie, man. Like, I like how they delve into his backstory. We get my boy Danny Trejo in there, who's being cool with Michael while he's in there, but then Michael still murders him. It's like, damn, bro, and that just goes to show that like Michael just don't care. He's savage. He just kills anybody. You know, I like that they got a big hulking dude to play Michael. I don't know, man. I just really like this movie, man. But I mean, obviously H2 is not as good. But I like that they brought my girl Danielle Harris back. Um, I know it's gonna sound weird because we just talked about like Halloween 4 and 5, and she was a little kid, but I was a little kid when she was a little kid. So when I saw her in the new Halloween movies, I was happy to see her grown up, and I was grown up, if you know what I mean. So
for reasons,
right?
For
I know what you
reasons.
mean.
So, hey, that's why I like horror movies. That's if it has to have that kind of stuff. If it doesn't, it's lame to me. Sorry. But no, man, I really like this one. I also, I am a fan of majority of Rob Zombie movies, like what's The Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. I like a lot of his stuff. I haven't seen some of the newer stuff like Salem's Lot or I did
The Monster.
Monster. I did see the Monsters, and that was trash. But yes.
I thought Lords of
seen
Salem.
it either. Yeah.
I thought Lords of Salem was his best till the end, and then it kind of went off the rail.
Okay. He's sitting back. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked this one. Terrence Stamp as Samuel Loomis is really good. I like Terrence Stamp. I mean, he's obviously not Donald Pleasance, but he does a good job at.
Before Loomis.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's Malcolm McDowell.
yeah. Oh, my bad. What did I say? Terrence Stamp? Sorry. I knew.
I know. I was hoping someone would catch it when I said the joke that he said the wrong name.
I just thought Zod in my head, and that's why. So, because he did play,
Should have been thinking Metallo.
He did think of another. He did play Zod, right?
He did Metallo.
No, so did McDowell, right? And
He did Metallo.
Okay, sorry, my bad. Thank you, guys. Yeah, no, I just I like that movie, man. Some negatives is just other Rob Zombie isms. It's like we like Rob Zombie movies and we like a lot of the stuff he does, but James Gunn is cool putting his wife in projects, but Zombie does it too, and she's at times can be annoying. Yeah.
But he puts her as the lead, not just as a secondary character in the background.
Yeah.
He's like, you're in my movie, you're the lead.
Yeah, I mean that, and then just like I think I had heard somebody else talk about it too, and they're just like like when we first go into Laurie's house at the beginning. It's just like immediately like people yelling and being like hillbillies, and it's just like so much chaos, you know?
Trash Billy.
Yeah, and it's just like we don't need that, dude. Like we understand, you know, it can be a little hectic and stuff, but it doesn't have to be them yelling and cursing at each other. And like, I mean, I like that kind of stuff, but like, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's just like typical Rob Zombie isms that
Yeah,
are
like
the
Michael's
things that like
mom.
it makes it cool, but at the same time, it kind of brings it down a little bit.
He doesn't
Michael's
know when
mom
to
being a
dial
stripper.
down.
Yeah. That scene is brutal.
You know, I always
I mean,
think
they
of in Hitchcock, because it's the same kid that played the young Michael Myers. In Hitchcock,
oh yeah,
he's like, say something else, and then he throws him up.
and he comes back crying. Like,
So
this one definitely plays into the psychology of the mask. Like we were talking about, like what the mask means to him.
yep. I really like this movie. It's not my number one, but most of the time when it comes to horror movies, I don't like so much revealed. When it comes to villains in general, I don't like so much revealed of the origin. I like that mystery because it makes the villains scarier. It makes them more dangerous, more unpredictable. I don't always like the motives of villains or slashers because it makes them more scary. But so making Lori his sister in the old films, I think Michael started losing his scariness, and he doesn't get it back until well he gets a little bit back in H2O because it's more of a one-on-one fight, as we'll talk about in the next part. But he loses that. But Rob was able to bring it back, and at least for me, because he gets in that psychology. He's telling a different story here. He's telling the same story, but he's still telling a different story because we get this Michael being 10 years old. He has abusive home. He has no father. He has a verbally abusive pervert father figure. So he has no male figure to go for. His mom's a stripper. His sister is a complete slut, but he loves his mom and he loves his little sister because they have they create this image. I mean, Laurie has this symbol of innocence to him. Like he wants to protect that innocence because she and they're the only people that are nice to him, like they treat him okay. Um, but he has these homicidal tendencies from the very get go. Um, One thing else I put in here too is I did like how he gets the mask from the boyfriend. I like that. I like that Michael is sitting there with his clown mask eating candy corn, which is arguably one of the worst Halloween candies there is. I know Finch loves candy corn, but like I thought that was kind of a funny thing there. Um, what's that? It's it's a required taste. It's just like
I
Rob Zombie
love
is.
it, man. I
Yeah.
love it.
Um, I did like these kills. I liked how he killed Ronnie. Um, I liked this is where gore was kind of okay to me because he's been dealing with this for so long. He's built up this anger. Like it made sense to me. And interesting things also is I liked how the janitor and I can't forget his name, Danny. What the heck's the janitor's name?
Danny Trejo's
Trino.
character.
Yes, says you got to learn to live in your head. So where Michael is able to deal with these years in the nut house and waiting, like put it in his head. I also really loved that Rob put in this story element that Michael does not remember killing people. That he doesn't remember anything of what he did, or at least he acts like he didn't.
You mean when he's a kid?
What's that?
You mean when he's a kid?
Yeah, like when he's having these meetings with his mom and Loomis, and like he's told like he doesn't know why he's there. He doesn't know why he can't go home. He doesn't know what he did, or at least he
I
acts
think
like he
that's
did.
interesting because I feel like he doesn't he blacked out. I think in a sense, like I think that's kind of goes back to that mass psychosis of like when he puts on the mask and he kills the kid and stuff. But then I think he just eventually integrates it into himself.
Yeah, I like that element. Also, I have in my notes that there's no way that a hospital, mental hospital, or anybody would give a patient a metal fork. It just wouldn't happen. So Rob kind of messed up in his writing there. Um, but I like that he makes masks. I like that too. I like that psychological thing. He doesn't want to be seen. He's a totally different person there. Um, so that was very intriguing. I thought this movie was just really like for a reboot, if you will. I thought it was pretty damn well done, and it probably was the best it could be because Rob was not allowed to go full Rob. you know,
Yep.
he was able like he had some source material he had to deal with, and they were able to rein it in. So yeah, yeah. So lastly, let's talk Halloween 2 and wrap this up. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, gentlemen. J- James, go.
I already made my comment about H2, so
What's
I'm
that?
moving on. I already made my comments about H2, so I'm done.
That's fair. Good, James. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's Finch. Go ahead. Go.
Forgettable.
Yeah, I really really tried to watch this movie last year. I really did, and I couldn't finish it. Like this is it's just so bad. Um, I him like bringing in the mom on the white horse, and starting with this quote like white horse linked to instinct, purity, and the drive of the physical body to release powerful and emotional forces like rage with ensuing chaos and destruction. Excerpt from the subconscious psychosis of dreams. Like adding on this dream stuff. Like this is where Rob is just like, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want. I'm gonna go full Rob in this, and you know,
I mean, that's what he said he was going to do. He was like, I'm just going to do it.
I'm just gonna do it. Yeah,
Yeah. The hospital. Yeah.
yeah. Octavius Spencer is there, and he stabs Octavius Spencer like 50,000 times. That part was cool, and
Wow, you get to see old.
yeah, like that part was cool. But when we get to him on the street and he sees his mom with the horse, I just have to shut off the film. It's just too
It
stupid to me.
gets repetitive a little bit with that, and at the same time, it's just very forgettable. I honestly,
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember her running into a bar, and like that. I don't remember half of the movie.
Can we just,
yeah, yeah.
I was
It's
going to say,
just
let's not forget they let Annie live this time,
yeah,
right? Didn't they let Annie live? For some reason, I thought they did. They switched it. I don't know. Like I said, I only watched them.
Daniel Harris, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's
I
what I'm
think
saying. Like
everybody
they at least
dies in
brought
the
her back.
second one, right?
Yeah, they at least brought her back for this. That's what I'm saying. Like they let her live in the first one, and then brought her back for this one. But yeah, she died.
Oh, Chucky, right? Yeah, yeah. See, Halloween always pulling other franchises in, you know?
yeah. It's just it's this is the worst Halloween movie in my opinion. Like I can't even call it really a Halloween movie. Like
So you're
Michael's
saying
there.
this is worse than Curse,
The cursed
than Curse of Michael Myers?
curse. Yes,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
I do. I mean, we'll get into some rankings tomorrow.
Because at least
But
Curse gives us Paul Rudd.
yeah, Paul Rudd.
Hey, I
You know,
got Daniel Harris in this one again. So and Brad Dwarf.
Tyler just keeps going up to me. He's like, "Would you like that movie if it didn't have Paul Rudd? Would you like Ant-Man if it didn't have Paul Rudd? Would you watch Halloween 6 if it didn't have Paul Rudd?" And the answer is
No,
no.
yeah,
That's
the only reason the Ant Man movies did
Paul
well.
Rudd.
yeah, it's just um yeah, it's this I don't know what else more
This
there is to
without
say
Paul
about
Rudd.
it. Like it's just so bad. So Well, guys, that ends all those timelines that we have there. Um, and our part two, we'll talk about the H2O timeline of Halloween H2O and Resurrection. I think that's going to be a fun one. Busta Rhymes drop kicks Michael in the chest. I mean, that's one of the greatest moments in all of cinema.
I'm a little bummed out. I'm not going to be able to be part of that one, man, because I like a lot of those movies in that timeline. I can tell you
I'm
now,
bummed.
Halloween H2O, really enjoy. Halloween Resurrection, really enjoy. Season of the Witch, hate it.
Hated it.
And Living Color, right? Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
And Halloween 2018, love it. Halloween Kills, yeah. Halloween Ends, bleh. There you go.
Those are all correct
That's
answers.
that's for tomorrow. Be here, unfortunately.
But we'll get into the goods tomorrow. We'll get into the goods. But I want to thank you guys all for being a part of this. It was a lengthy one, but it was a fun one. We got into some interesting thoughts. I think part two will be a little bit more interesting. A little bit more controversy as we talk these different timelines and stuff. But I think it'll be fun. So I hope this podcast thrilled you. I hope it horrified you. And if it didn't, I hope it left you gravely amused.